In this world, there's two kinds of people, my friend. Those with loaded guns, and those who dig. Broadcasting from a Montana wilderness fortress at the headwaters of the Missouri, this is Matt Christiansen Live.
I'm speaking to the sentiment. People do want these executives dead.
Well, you said we want them dead, and I guess that's...
I mean, look, I'm going to say I'm with the people in the sense that if you have watched a loved one die because insurance has denied them life-saving essential health care, it is natural to wish that the people who run those systems would suffer the same fate as your loved one. And millions of people across America have had this experience.
Shut up, bitch!
So yes, when I say, do I wish someone dead, is that advocating for them to be killed? No, of course not. I do think that loss of life is a tragedy. I'm very against death generally, as a principle.
I doubt it.
You are fake news.
You serious?
I've become friends with school shooters.
Very fake news.
That's disgusting.
Shut up, faggot.
I can't believe that someone would have so much hate in their heart.
It's not against the law, ho. Fuck you.
All right, America, go to the YouTube right now. Skank free, whoever he is.
Dude, Matt straight up sucks.
How dare you?
All right, go.
In 5, 4, 3.
I can't do it. We'll do it live.
Fuck it, we'll do it live.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is Matt Christiansen Live for Sunday, December 8th, 2024. Thank you for tuning in. Now, first of all, why the hell does it look like I have a black eye?
Oh my God, bro!
No, I didn't get my ass kicked. No, the FBI didn't finally show up at my house. The actual truth, of course, is far more embarrassing. Last night, we had some friends over for some Christmas festivities and games. During the course of these events, I was presented with a yoga pose that looked impossible. Stupidly, I thought I should attempt this seemingly impossible yoga pose. As you can tell, it didn't go well, and my face rubbed across the carpet. So I have a rug burn on my face. And yes, intuitively, if you put the pieces together, the only way I could scrape my face on the ground is if this seemingly impossible, actually impossible yoga pose was face down.
I guess what I just have to say to you is, are you gay?
Are you gay?
Are you a gay man?
I'm a married man with children, actually, and now wounded pride, too. But, of course, I invite your jokes about the matter. No, it wasn't any more scandalous than general jovial holiday party jackassery, of course.
Great story. Compelling and rich.
I think that's the first rug burn on my face that I've ever had, certainly as an adult, maybe as a kid. Not a common occurrence, obviously. I'm not going to be attempting any more impossible yoga poses as a matter of holiday party entertainment. So, anyway, on the docket tonight, as far as news, to the extent you can take me seriously, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, he's out. Syrian rebels stormed Damascus over the weekend. Assad fled to Russia. How the hell did all of this happen so quickly? I'll consider. I was wondering what the role of the U.S. is or was until earlier today. We're already doing bombing. You think we're doing it kind of I'm sure we are doing a lot of covert stuff. We're doing the bombing already, though. The jury at the Daniel Penny trial can't reach a verdict, so prosecutors dropped the higher charge in what is a legally questionable move. Deliberations are supposed to resume tomorrow, but there's a legal question as to whether they can. I'll explain. It is very technical and complicated what's going on there. There's more information on the assassination of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson in New York City, and Taylor Lorenz, as you heard there in the intro, she's cheerleading the murder. So we'll check in with that. In the second half of the show, my friend NeoUnrealist, he's going to join to break down the ongoing international effort to crack down on social media companies for censorship. Very interesting thing he's been following. With the censorship effort seemingly not going the right way in the U.S. through all sorts of legal matters, and of course through the election of Donald Trump. Are the forces of censorship moving to exert international pressure on these companies to censor the U.S. indirectly in that way? We'll talk about that. Plus, I have a few more odds and ends, including, of course, Hoax Hate to close. I'll catch up with your super chats as well. $10 and up on the Sunday show because I am a no-good, low-down money grabber. My sources say our friend KnuckleHunkyBuck will join us to read super chat once again. And speaking of, hey, if you enjoy the show, please consider supporting the show. You can do that for as little as $1 a month over on my website, mattchristiansenmedia.com, or mattis.gay, or maybe even Matt has a black eye from being gay.com, or I don't know, whatever the website would be. That one's not real. Don't go to that. But mattis.gay is a real website that you can go to. It's like, you ever see the Christmas ads for Dick's Sporting Goods right now? Every time they come on the TV, go to Dicks.com. It's like, you're really gambling with that. You really got to trust Dick's to go to Dicks.com, but the ads urge you to do so. Likewise, I'm telling you, go to mattis.gay. You can find my content there. Listener support, of course, is hugely appreciated. It is what keeps the operation running. There are perks available for higher levels of support as well. mattchristiansenmedia.com/support, linked in the description. Of course, we've got to say hi to our featured listener-owned business for the evening as well, and that's my friends at Hero Soap Company. They've just launched the Freedom Box right in time for the holidays. It's a great gift option for Christmas. The Freedom Box features 4 new exclusive soaps. You're only going to get these in the Freedom Box, all inspired by the triumphs of American history. Boston Tea Party is clean, fresh, and calming. Overmountain is woodsy. Frontiers is masculine. And Liberty Cleanse is woodsy, sweet, and musky. You can pick up a Freedom Box, or, of course, you can pick up my signature soaps, Timberline or Old West, or anything else from Hero Soap using promo code MC Listener at checkout for 10% off. They got shampoo, conditioner, liquid body wash, cologne, all sorts of great Christmas gift options. 10% off, promo code MC Listener at checkout. Of course, mattchristiansenmedia.com/deals for all the information, as well as our other friendly listener-owned businesses. A couple matters, or really one matter of housekeeping. My assistant, Tim, is away for the week. He usually handles show timestamps for the show for me. So if you listen after the fact on YouTube, you're listening the next day or on demand. If you ever use those timestamps to navigate the show, Tim does that for me, and he's taken some family time, and so he won't be doing that for this show or Wednesday's show. And so we're just going to take a break from timestamps for the next 2. But of course, we appreciate Tim and his continued efforts for the show. He will be back next Sunday, and we hope he has a good time away. And we thank him for all his help.
We love you. You're very special.
Now, moving into the news that matters, it seems like weekly I have an update in stories of this theme. Now, this is not new news. This is not something we haven't heard. It's formalization of what we already knew. But one of my favorite linebacker, and he's not even, I don't know who my favorite one is, because between Diego and Noah, it's 1A and 1B. But we already knew that Noah had committed to his college football team of choice. Now it's official. This week, in a tweet that rightfully went viral, the Eastern Michigan University football program announced the signing of Indiana linebacker prospect Noah
Kaniga.
The team account said, if you need a linebacker, they know a guy. That is not the right line. The right line, despite his complexion, of course, is, if you need a linebacker, they know a
Kaniga.
Come on. Congratulations to the Eastern Michigan Eagles is the name of the team. The Eastern Michigan Eagles football program. And, of course, congratulations to Noah Kaniga.
He said the N-word.
Condolences to the play-by-play guy for the team, soon-to-be former play-by-play guy, the first time Noah makes one of his famous plays during a game. Now, this story also went viral this week. It actually happened a few months ago. I had not seen it until now. The police body cam video was all over X. In Lake County, Florida, this is the Orlando area, a 72-year-old man named Dennis Wynn was arrested after shooting a Walmart delivery drone that was hovering above his house. He was charged with shooting an aircraft, discharging a firearm in a residential area, and criminal mischief. But there are two things that make this arrest and the body cam video of it notable. Number one, just how honest this nice old man is about what happened. And then number two, his George Floyd joke upon arrest.
At some point today, did a drone fly over your house and you shoot at it? I'm going to be real blunt with you and ask.
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay, why'd you shoot at it?
Because I thought it was somebody and turned around playing games on my house.
Right there. Sitting straight above it?
Straight above me.
Do you have any idea?
Hovered, lowered some kind of cord down or something, turned around and sent something back up, and then after it was shot at, it turned around and went north.
What'd you shoot at it with?
9mm. How much trouble am I in?
Quite a bit. You've been honest with me, I'm going to be honest with you. So there's a federal charge that goes along with it. There's a felony charge that goes along with it. If you're being honest, you really just took me off guard. I'm not going to lie.
What am I going to do? I'm going to lie?
You want a coffee in the front?
Whatever you need to do by protocol.
Just let me know if it's too tight, all right?
Yeah. I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
Oh no, I guess they did make the cuffs too tight. But he says he hit the drone. I haven't seen confirmation of that, but that's what the man said. They said I hit it, so I must be a good shot. So if he actually hit a drone with a handgun, I'm impressed. In addition to an honest man and a funny man, he's a great shot too. I don't know the status of his charges or whatever plea deal may be in play. Maybe he's going to trial. I don't know. I don't know what the status of the case is. Somebody's got to get Ron DeSantis to pardon this man immediately. In fact, hire him to work at the border to shoot down the cartel drones, since he's such a great shot. Now, the case actually did spark a very interesting debate about the law here. Because as charismatic as that man may be, of course, he can't be discharging a gun without knowing where the round is going. Certainly can't be doing that in a residential area. However, is there a self-defense argument? My friend Viva Fry was considering this on X. If we accept the premise that it's unknown what the drone is carrying, like maybe the drone is carrying some kind of explosive or something else that could attack you or damage your property, is it reasonable to defend yourself from this drone? And as many questions as I do have about the role of drones in society, and of course the privacy matters at stake, or potentially even the self-defense matters at stake, I do think the correct take, and Viva was just considering this. He didn't say anything that I necessarily disagree with. I'm not saying he's wrong, but in the back and forth, I think the correct take from Andrew Branca, or the correct take is the one from Andrew Branca, Law of Self-Defense. And his point is, well, just because drones can carry explosives or could theoretically attack you or damage your property, in the absence of any actual evidence, to believe that they are doing that is mere speculation. For example, anybody ringing your doorbell could be there armed with murderous intent, but absent evidence to support such a belief, the belief is speculative, and speculation is not a legal defense. Whatever happens here, Godspeed to Dennis Wynn. I will also note, pursuant to his joke reference there, by not doing meth and fentanyl and resisting the cop, even if you think he's been treated unfairly, unjustifiably, he easily lived to fight another day in court. Of course, unlike the man he was referencing with his joke. Last small item before I get to what's going on in Syria here, but the election may have been historic after all. We constantly hear explanations about how it was actually kind of close and this was not a mandate election and Trump didn't really win that bigly, as he'd put it. We do know that Kamala Harris suffered a thorough defeat. She got fewer votes than Joe Biden did in 2020, though, of course, we all have questions about how many votes Joe Biden actually got in 2020. But according to the official record, Kamala Harris got fewer. Kamala Harris did not win a single battleground state. She got swept. And I don't believe that she outperformed Joe Biden in any single state. I know it was close in Washington state, but as far as I understand, given the final numbers, I don't think she even outperformed him there. It was either 49 or 50 states that she failed to outperform Joe Biden. So effectively all of them. And we also know that overwhelmingly, the country trended red in its voting patterns this election. Even in blue states voted more red in 2020 or in 2024 than they did in 2020. Well, a new report this week says Kamala Harris didn't flip a single county in the country. Donald Trump flipped, I see two numbers, 54 or 55, so I assume one of them just went official. Let's say 55. Donald Trump flipped 55 counties across the country in this last election. So these are counties that voted for Biden in 2020. Trump flipped them this time. Kamala Harris's total counties flipped in her favor, 0. She flipped 0 counties who went Trump in 2020 to herself. And if that is correct, and I've just seen this claim reported, I haven't actually reviewed the county by county data myself, but I'll take it as correct. That would be the first time in almost a century, since 1932, that a major party candidate failed to flip even one county across the country. So, of course, RIP to the knucklehead campaign of Tim Walz and Kamala Harris.
I'm a knucklehead at times.
And all the best in their new ventures.
I've become friends with school shooters.
But the big news of the weekend is that the Assad regime in Syria has abruptly fallen. Now, I say abrupt, even though there's been a civil war there for the last decade plus. But the speed at which this happened, let me say up front, I am not an expert on Syrian politics. I couldn't tell you the history of the civil war that's been going on there for the last decade plus. Don't look to me for the most informed, detailed knowledge about what's going on in Syria. But when I say abrupt, it is... this just kind of happened. We've been watching this civil war go on since 2011, and now all of a sudden, like a bunch of rebel guys just walked down to the capital in Damascus, and they've taken over the country. And Assad has fled, now we know, to Russia. He has asylum in Russia. So all of a sudden, a war that took like a decade and was kind of at a stalemate between a whole bunch of warring factions, it's resolved insofar as Assad is now out of the country. Again, he has been granted asylum, according to the BBC, he's been granted asylum by the Kremlin. He is in Moscow, is the current understanding. There was a report that that Assad, the Syrian president, had a flight out of Damascus to go, I guess, to Moscow. The report was his plane had crashed. Apparently that's incorrect. There was a plane crash, but it was a different plane, not his plane. So how did this happen? Syrian rebels in recent weeks, they started a new offensive campaign from the north. Okay, they took Aleppo, and I'm kind of like Gary Johnson. What is Aleppo? Is there a map in here? I guess I don't have one handy. I should have prepped that. But as far as Syrian geography, you got these groups are coming from the north, or at least this rebel group that took over. They're coming from the north. They took Aleppo, Syria's largest city. They're kind of their economic hub. That was on November 27th, so a week and change ago, 2 weeks ago. Then they took Hama, a strategically important city 90 miles south of Aleppo. Syria's army withdrew from the city. Once they had open supply lanes from the north, they were able to continue south all the way to the capital, Damascus, where they arrived over the weekend, and Assad fled. So who exactly are these rebels? Who are we dealing with in Syria? They are, again, it's all sorts of factions fighting in Syria. Some of them are allied by their opposition to Assad. But this particular rebel group that is being credited with overthrowing Assad, it's led by an Islamist alliance called Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS. They are working with a group of Turkish-backed Syrian militia. The founder of HTS, Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, was once a participant in the Iraqi insurgency against the U.S. as a member of the group that eventually became the Islamic State, or ISIS, of course. Now, his ties to al-Qaeda, so he's joined all the clubs. He was in ISIS. He was in al-Qaeda. I don't know about the Taliban. Presumably he has a weapon delivered to him by the Taliban, though, a U.S. weapon. I don't know. But his ties to al-Qaeda stretch back to 2003 when he joined insurgents battling U.S. troops in Iraq. He's a Syrian native. He was detained by the U.S. military but remained in Iraq. Again, this is like early 2000s to 2010s. The Syrian native was detained by the U.S. military but remained in Iraq. Okay, during that time, al-Qaeda usurped like-minded groups and formed the extremist Islamic State of Iraq, ISIS, led by Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. After the Syrian civil war started in 2011, al-Baghdadi sent al-Golani, this guy who is now overthrowing Assad, sent him to Syria, where I guess he's been for the last decade plus. The U.S. currently has a $10 million bounty on him. Well, okay, so then who the hell takes over now? We don't really know. It's kind of up in the air. There's not anything official on that. The UN is exercising its influence, trying to facilitate diplomacy between all the warring groups. What exactly the international community is looking for is unclear. They're condemning Assad as a brutal dictator, of course, as is the common line, and okay, fair enough. I don't know a lot about what Assad has done or hasn't done. I do know that if you oust him to put ISIS guys or al-Qaeda guys or ISIS al-Qaeda guys in charge, that's not necessarily an improvement. So if you swap out the brutal dictator for radical Islamic leadership, is that a win? That's kind of what everybody's wrestling with right now, as far as I understand. What's Biden saying? Biden gave a statement today. Didn't really outline any actual policy. He just said, at long last, the Assad regime has fallen. Quote, this regime brutalized, tortured, and killed literally hundreds of thousands of innocent Syrians. Okay, what are we going to do about it? Well, as I mentioned, we're already doing the bombing, so we're doing something about that. According to reporting earlier today, the U.S. carried out a major round of airstrikes on Islamic State targets on Sunday and warned the terror group, again ISIS, against trying to regain strength in the country after rebels took over the government. Reportedly dozens of airstrikes on over 75 targets. Biden is saying, yay, Assad is out. Trump posted on Truth Social or Twitter, one of the two. He said, quote, in any event, Syria is a mess and not our friend, and the United States should have nothing to do with it. This is not our fight. Let's play it out. Do not get involved, or let it play it out, rather. Do not get involved, and in all caps. So I guess he really means it. But we're already involved, so apparently and unfortunately that statement is too late. We're already involved, and I have a feeling we were probably involved deeply before this bombing run. We'll probably be involved deeply going forward. Now, again, as a mostly uninformed observer, not somebody who's followed these developments closely, I do have some questions about what's going on. Firstly, why now? Again, the Syrian civil war has been ongoing since 2011. So how did it end so abruptly and so quickly? And the explanation that I see in a lot of media coverage is that Assad in Syria was propped up by Russia and Iran and Hezbollah in Lebanon. And Russia, of course, is focused on its war with Ukraine. Iran and Hezbollah are caught up in the ongoing war with Israel. And so Assad's allies that were keeping him in power, they have not been able to give him the support that they previously were, and so Assad is very vulnerable. And that could be, I'm not saying that's wrong, I guess that makes sense, but the question is, why didn't this collapse happen sooner then? Because Russia didn't just go to war with Ukraine. That's like 3 years long at this point. The Hamas attack in Gaza was over a year ago, and the Hezbollah rocket war with Israel in the north, that's been ongoing immediately after, since immediately after October 7th. So again, more than a year in that case. Neither of these things are new. They're multiple years old. These are not things that changed recently. So why the sudden change in this effect? Second question, where exactly was the fight? Now, I haven't seen official reports on casualties in this latest rebel push from the north. Maybe there are a lot. Maybe I just haven't seen it. But based on what I'm reading, it looks like a lot of the fighting was pretty minimal. You had these rebels moving, again, north to south, city to city, really without a lot of serious opposition. The Syrian army reportedly just kept retreating back toward Damascus until they just gave up Damascus too. The reporting I've seen says that the Syrian military was demoralized. They just didn't have a lot of fight in them. And again, that could be true. I'm not saying it's wrong. I don't know much about how moralized the Syrian military is. Maybe it's a lack of resources. Maybe they've lost faith in Assad himself. Who knows? But again, did they just suddenly become demoralized? Did they suddenly lose resources? These conditions that we're talking about have been constant for a year plus. That, of course, invites the last question. What is the U.S. role? And again, beyond the bombing run that we did today. Because it's not hard to wonder. If I'm wondering what changed here, well, one thing that obviously changed is the outcome of the U.S. election. And you have to wonder if that had something to do with it. This is speculation. I don't necessarily have evidence to support it. I'm just wondering, were these rebel groups supported by the U.S. in any capacity for the purpose of, say, regime change? Well, Biden or whoever is the actual president still has influence and can exercise that influence internationally before they're on the way out in a month and change. Or, like I said, maybe the Syrian rebels, maybe the difference was they just got a shipment of all the stuff left over in Afghanistan. They got sweet kits that we left behind, and it was the high-tech weaponry and vehicles that allowed them to push into Damascus in ways they couldn't before. But that's my idiot rube take on what's going on in Syria. I don't know a lot about the conflict, but it does, as with any good conspiracy theory, it's the timing. I'm suspicious of the timing, but I actually am. Nothing that they're saying about what has changed to explain this sudden development actually changed recently. These are things that have been constants for a long time. So I'm suspicious about who is involved and what the intended effects are. But moving into the Daniel Penny trial, of course, this in New York City. Daniel Penny, recall, is the former Marine who put the drug-addicted, mentally ill bum Jordan Neely in a chokehold on the subway last year after Neely got onto the train and started threatening people. Neely died after the incident. Penny was charged with second-degree manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide. Now, the jury, throughout the course of the week, they asked to review several pieces of evidence, including police body cam, video of the chokehold, and testimony from the city medical examiner. Remember, who concluded that Penny killed Neely, but said she didn't consider toxicology or the drugs involved at all, and in fact said, I wouldn't care if you showed me that he had enough fentanyl in his system to kill an elephant. I would still say that Daniel Penny killed him. You could show me a fatal drug dose. I wouldn't say the drug dose was fatal. Okay. Now, he didn't have enough fentanyl in his system to kill an elephant, according to the toxicology report, but he did have a synthetic cannabinoid called K2 that has a lot of unknown effects because it's constantly developed in new and creative ways. And Jordan Neely had some health complications that likely played a factor as well. But anyway, The jury considered all of these things this week. They started deliberating on Tuesday, so they're now 3 days and change into deliberations. And on Friday, they came back to the judge and said, we can't reach a verdict on this higher charge. Now, again, Penny was charged with second-degree manslaughter, which is a higher level charge, and criminally negligent homicide, a lower level charge that can be considered once the jury has dealt with that higher level charge. But they could not reach a unanimous decision on the higher level charge, and so they came back to the judge and said, can't do it. Who knows? Was it 6-6? Was it 10-2? Who knows what the breakdown of the opinions on the jury was, but they could not agree, either to convict or to acquit. And so with that information, the defense team said, well, they can't get a conviction here, and they can't acquit either. So we have to declare, Judge, you have to declare a mistrial by hung jury. And prosecutors pulled a bit of a stunt. They said, well, hold on. There's still a charge they haven't considered. So before you dismiss or before you declare a mistrial, and I guess they'll bring another one, they'll get a new jury and bring another one. Before you declare a mistrial in this case, the prosecutors, we're going to dismiss that higher charge, second-degree manslaughter, so that the jury can consider the lesser charge, the criminally negligent homicide. And the judge apparently has agreed to that while reviewing what he grants as a legal problem. So the legal problem here is that according to New York law, at least as far as is reported, now I'm not an expert in New York law, so I'm just taking this as true, but the judge granted it, so there's got to be some truth to it. The jury can only consider the lower charge after they have dealt with the higher charge, but they weren't able to deal with the higher charge, as in they didn't acquit on the higher charge. There was no decision. There was no consensus. So they can't move to the lower charge until they have agreed on the higher charge, but they didn't. Prosecutors just said, well, whatever. we were just trying to see what we could get. We can't get that, so let's move to the lower charge. That's not the way it works, at least according to the defense and their presentation of New York law. And the judge in this case admitted there might be a legal problem with that. According to ABC News, Wiley, the judge, left unanswered the question about whether the jury could move on to the second count if they were unable to reach a verdict on the first count. He said he believed the jury moving to the second count is possible, but needs to find the legal authority to do so. So in a case that is full of legally dubious interpretations, at least in my opinion, we have another legally dubious interpretation to keep Daniel Penny on the hook. But unfortunately for Daniel Penny, I think even if the judge declares a mistrial in this case, because they can't move on to the lower charge if they don't agree on the higher charge, the second he does that, you think Alvin Bragg is going to be like, well, I guess I tried. No, they're going to get a new jury. They're going to try again. And I personally have all kinds of questions about the constitutionality of bringing a person whose case ended in a hung jury in this way back to trial. Is that double jeopardy? In this case, so far, prosecutors have failed to convince the jury beyond a reasonable doubt in unanimity that Daniel Penny was reckless in a way that caused Jordan Neely's death. They've failed to make that case to the jury. And yet, if there is a mistrial declared, double jeopardy be damned. Get back in the courthouse, Daniel Penny, until we finally get... This is a practice run. And now prosecutors have learned, well, that charge was too high. Let's try again. That in spirit is against everything the constitutional prohibition against double jeopardy is supposed to protect against. Now, as far as the specific charges, let's say this does continue. Now, apparently, by virtue of the jury and their inability to reach a decision, and I guess because for now that higher charge is going to be dropped, but had that stood, the manslaughter charge, the standard there was proving a defendant reckless, so in this case Penny, recklessly caused another person's death, as in Daniel Penny engaged in reckless behavior he knew had some likelihood to cause a death, but he did it anyway. The jury's unconvinced on that. If he was convicted on that, that could have put him in prison for up to 15 years. Criminally negligent homicide, a lower charge, involves engaging in serious, quote, blameworthy conduct, but not necessarily perceiving such a risk. So kind of a lower degree, it's a negligence as opposed to a knowing recklessness. If that stands, and let's say the jury comes back with this conviction on criminally negligent homicide, Daniel Penny still faces up to 4 years in prison. So how that all gets resolved, they're coming back tomorrow, assuming that he sends the judge sends the jury back to consider this lower charge. The jury's set to deliberate starting tomorrow morning again, and presumably we're going to have some sort of resolution to all of this week, and we'll see how it goes. Now, as one person. A tweet that went viral this week, the sketch, the courtroom sketches. Of course, we don't have cameras in the courtroom in New York. Yeah, we all know who would not. We all know who held up the process for Daniel Penny and held out to convict him on manslaughter. It's got to be that MFer with the mask, 100%. And to add insult to the injury, if you don't think that the criminal prosecution of Daniel Penny is unfair and harsh enough, now Penny is facing a civil lawsuit from Jordan Neely's dad. Yes, the same dad who allowed his son to become a drug addict and mentally ill and a degenerate on the streets, harassing and attacking people. That dad is going to say that actually Daniel Penny was negligent and reckless. This guy has been absent from his son's life as he was a drug-addicted, mentally ill, deranged hobo attacking people until he died. Look at the New York Times reporting. Mr. Neely was estranged from his family, including Mr. Zachary. Mr. Zachary is Mr. Neely's dad during latter years of his life. So, thank you, Dad. Really appreciate you hanging around to help out.
You suck. Fuck you.
Andre Zachary is the name of Jordan Neely's dad. The lawsuit is now filed. It was filed Wednesday. Again, this is a civil lawsuit, totally independent of the criminal proceeding that's ongoing right now. But the substance of the lawsuit is that Daniel Penny negligently, carelessly, and recklessly caused Jordan Neely's death. No, that's you, Dad. That's you neglecting your son. That's you being reckless with your fatherhood. Little bit of accountability there instead of this sort of stuff is just so disgusting. I hate using that word because it's always pearl clutchy.
That's disgusting.
But it is. Like if you're a deadbeat dad who doesn't take care of your kid until he becomes a drug-addicted, mentally ill hobo harassing people on the subway until he dies. You show up when he dies to cash in on the dead body of your son. I don't know what else to call you other than a disgusting person who desperately needs to look inward. Fingers pointed elsewhere to try to collect a check. Consult a mirror, for the love of God. But Mr. Zachary, Jordan Neely's dad, he was at the trial. He's been present at the criminal trial of Daniel Penny. According to the New York Times reporting, Mr. Zachary has not offered a statement to the press since the first day of the trial when he described his son as a good kid and very humble. Well, number one, how would you know? First of all, he's not a kid. He was an adult. But how would you know if he was a good kid and very humble when the same reporting informs us that you were estranged from his life? Number two, that statement is contrary to what every witness said about Jordan Neely's behavior that day. Even if he was humble, he was a good person who was humble every other day of his life. He was not a good, humble person that day on the subway. He was insane and he was threatening, which is why he's not threatening anybody anymore. Someone had to deal with it. Daniel Penny, unfortunately, was the man who had to deal with it. Why? Because this father didn't, and now he's seeking to collect money from the man who was put in the unfair, unfortunate position to have to do it himself. If Daniel Penny is put in prison for this and is put on some kind of financial hook for it, we are done as a society. But I'm sure many would say you're late in that assessment. We've been done for some time. We'll see. Meanwhile, the other big news of the week, the manhunt for the man who assassinated the CEO of UnitedHealthcare, Brian Thompson, on the New York City street on camera on Wednesday morning. The manhunt continues. There were several developments in the investigation later in the week. Investigators have video of the assassin leaving the scene on a bike and entering Central Park. And then once he was in Central Park, he left his backpack and he took a taxi to a bus station by the George Washington Bridge. Police have identified many Atlanta connections in this case. He apparently came to New York from Atlanta on a Greyhound bus, supposedly has social connections, maybe family in Atlanta. Anyway, NYPD is working with Atlanta police to try to connect the dots. Again, police did recover that abandoned backpack in Central Park. They have not found a gun, but they did find this backpack with his jacket in it, and there was Monopoly money in the backpack, which may be an additional clue about the motive. Of course, it was also discovered earlier in the week that the that he had written 3 words on the casings of his ammunition. The words were deny, delay, and depose. It was initially believed it was deny, defend, and depose. Police clarified Friday it was deny, delay, and depose. Believed to be a reference to UnitedHealthcare potentially denying health insurance claims or refusing to cover certain services. But that is the assumption at this point, not confirmed. Investigators also recovered a cell phone at the scene of the crime and are working to recover information from that cell phone. Now, also, they recovered apparently a water bottle and maybe like wrappers to granola bars or whatever snacks he bought at the Starbucks before he went and killed this guy. And supposedly they've recovered a smudged fingerprint from some of that garbage, and they're working with the medical examiner's office to try to find a match for the fingerprint. And of course, we also got this image of the suspected killer. We had only seen him masked prior, but they released this unmasked image of him. I guess this is the guy. A lot of people were saying, well, hold on, that image is not the same clothing as the guy we saw doing the assassination. He had apparently stayed at this hostel in New York City for several days, scouting this out, planning his attack, whatever. He's been there for a while. And this photo, I don't believe, is from the same day as the assassination. So that's why the clothing is different. But according to witnesses, this guy had been walking around masked all the time. This is one of the unfortunate side effects of everything we did in 2020. Oh, a person wearing a mask is good. He's just watching out for the health and welfare of his friends around him. Nope, that's a criminal. We used to understand those things. Now a mask is a sign of trustworthy citizen, in addition to everything else that has been completely turned upside down and backward in recent years. But supposedly he had some kind of flirtatious conversation with the clerk lady, the desk lady at this hostel. And she convinced him to lower his mask so she could see that delightful smile of his. So we got that image. I think there's also an image of him in a taxi or somewhere else along his travels. But that, of course, is a big piece of the evidence so far. Now, the assassin here is potentially known to police. Maybe they have an ID on him. He's not named publicly. But yesterday, Mayor Eric Adams implied investigators may have an ID on the guy. Mayor Adams, according to this reporting in the New York Post, he was doing some sort of speaking yesterday, declined to say whether investigators already had the suspect's name. When asked about it at a Harlem event, quote, "We don't want to release that now," he said. "If we do, we are basically giving a tip to the person we are seeking, and we don't want to give him an upper hand at all. Let him continue to believe he can hide behind that mask. We revealed his face. We're going to reveal who he is, and we're going to bring him to justice." There's also new information about the gun that he used. And when I talked about this on the Wednesday stream with Frank, we got into this a little bit. Everybody was wondering, myself included, because it appeared to be a handgun with a suppressor. But one of the things that was so bizarre about the video was the guy committed this assassination from behind with total confidence, not any hesitation at all. But he starts shooting, and it looks like he's got a suppressor and a handgun. And it looks like the handgun is malfunctioning because he has to cycle the gun after every shot. So are the casings not ejecting? Is it failing to chamber another round? That would assume that you had, say, a traditional semi-automatic setup, like he's got a Glock with a suppressor on it. And something about the setup isn't working right. But it does seem weird to be like committing an assassination with a setup that you're not confident in and that doesn't really work very well. Well, that apparently may not be what happened at all. Maybe the manual cycling that we saw is actually the design. And this is what investigators believe now. They believe the gunman used a rare integrally suppressed pistol, possibly what's called, and this is German here, Brugger and Tomet. I don't know how to pronounce it, but Station 6, a modern reproduction, or maybe it's not German, something European, but a modern reproduction of the British Welrod, a silenced pistol designed for covert operations during World War II. The Station 6, which is chambered in either 9mm or 45, I don't know what he used, but it derives its name from Britain's World War II era Station, Station 9? I don't know. What is, IX is 9, right? I haven't brushed up on my Roman numerals recently. Whatever, Station whatever gun. This was a weapons and it's not a gun in Britain. It was a weapons research and development division that created this particular gun. It is not a common firearm. Firearms expert Steve Wolf told Newsweek in this reporting very few were manufactured, and they're mostly used for veterinary purposes. It's a modern reproduction of a ahistorical assassin. No, it's an historical. I thought we've settled this.
Come on, man.
It's a modern reproduction of a historical assassination weapon, says this gun expert. Wolf noted that the weapon used in the attack required manually cycling for each shot, mimicking the well rod's functionality. He fired 3 rounds, the assassin, and 3 live rounds were recovered, meaning he cycled the gun 6 times, Wolf said. The ammunition is stored in a magazine, but the shooter must manually pull the bolt back and push it forward for each shot. Okay. So he perhaps had some sort of rare, odd setup that I've not personally really heard of before. But of course, the other part of the story is how many people are enjoying or celebrating the moment. This isn't just a manhunt for arrest right now. It's a manhunt for autographs. This guy is a hero because in the view of his fans, the killing is justified on the basis that Brian Thompson, the CEO of the company, UnitedHealthcare, he denies too many healthcare claims. And so primary among these big assassination fans is apparently the assassin's groupie, Taylor Lorenz. Now, you may remember reporter Taylor Lorenz from her time at the Washington Post. I think she was with the New York Times for a minute. Maybe you remember her crying on MSNBC about people being mean to her on the internet. Or most recently, you might remember Taylor Lorenz still insisting on wearing a mask, saying that everyone who doesn't do so is actually raw dogging the air.
Oh my God, bro.
That's a new term, raw dogging the air. Well, now Taylor Lorenz is, I guess, hosting the party to celebrate the murder of this CEO. Because in response to a complaint that Blue Cross Blue Shield, another insurance agency, that Blue Cross has decided it will no longer cover anesthesia for the full duration of some surgeries. Lorenz tweeted, it was Blue Sky, which I haven't gone on to myself. It's like a lefty Twitter now. She posted on Blue Sky, quoting this story or this take on Blue Cross's coverage for anesthesia, quote, "And people wonder why we want these executives dead." And the term we, I'm sure, is intentional there. That would include her, not why some, why they, why the critics, why we, me included, we want these executives dead. She wants business leaders she doesn't like dead. And so she goes on TMZ to explain herself, and she doubles down. Now, I'm not saying I want them murdered, she says. I would just be very, very happy if they weren't alive anymore.
I'm speaking to the sentiment. People do want these executives dead. If you have watched,
you said we want them dead, and I guess that's...
I mean, look, I'm going to say I'm with the people in the sense that if you have watched a loved one die because insurance has denied them life-saving essential health care, it is natural to wish that the people who run those systems would suffer the same fate as your loved one. And millions of people across America have had this experience. So yes, am I, when I say, do I wish someone dead, is that advocating for them to be killed? No, of course not. But am I going to shed tears or have a lot of empathy for somebody that has facilitated the deaths of thousands of innocent Americans through intentionally denying them coverage? I am not going to, weep over it. I do think that loss of life is a tragedy. I'm very against death generally, as a principle. But I think, again, why do we mourn certain deaths and condone other deaths of innocent, vulnerable people?
Yeah, I don't know anybody who condones death of people who have a particular medical condition that they're unable to have treated. I think everybody agrees that's an unfortunate circumstance. Brian Thompson, I assume, included. Now, obviously, I have some moral problems and questions with what she's saying there. But before that, it's such a cowardly take. Oh, people are saying, I'm speaking to the opinions of some. No, you're not. You said we. You said you agree with the idea. Just say it. All right? Like, stand by your view and own it. And she, those people over there, but I really understand them. And mostly I wink, wink and nod, nod. Just agree with them then. Just stand by your take. She doesn't do that. Oh, I'm very against death as a matter of principle, except, when people I don't like are killed. And then death is kind of okay. Or at least not tear-worthy. I wouldn't cry about it. Or maybe even it's awesome. Or at least those people over there think it's awesome. And I'm friends with them. And we hang out at our parties and say it's awesome. But on the internet, I'm going to shy away from that for a second. And I actually do get it. Okay. I mean, pursuant to conversations that have been had on the former iteration of this show going back, I'm not going to pretend that conversations like this are above content I've participated in the past and will tonight and probably will going forward in the future. We all have moments like this to varying degrees. Everybody can think of a person we hate, public figures or otherwise, whose death we might not be sad about. Maybe even whose death you might be a little Taylor Lorenz happy about. Okay, this is not me defending it. I'm just saying the sentiment that she's expressing, I think a lot of people have to a varying degree about different people, whether it's Brian Thompson or somebody else. I personally am not pretending to be above that. I'm saying I think we have to think very carefully about how we handle that sort of thought and how we build policy based on that thought. More on the moral philosophy of that in a second. But first I want to talk about the practical terms here, the facts. We just accept the premise, UnitedHealthcare, like they deny a bunch of people's claims and it's all Brian Thompson's fault. And this is actually kind of okay because he personally killed a bunch of people. So it's fine to murder him in cold blood, or at least it's like more okay than the average person. When Taylor Lorenz says that he's responsible for the deaths of millions, or people like him are responsible for the deaths of millions, okay, what is the degree of truth in that statement about denying claims and that grievance? Read a little bit about this today. I can't pretend to have all the information, but according to Forbes, there are multiple reports. They cite 2 here, but multiple reports saying that UnitedHealthcare is an industry leader when it comes to denying claims. As in, someone who has a UnitedHealthcare insurance policy and they want to get a certain medical procedure, or they've already had a certain medical procedure and they're trying to get UnitedHealth to pay for some or all of that procedure pursuant to the health insurance policy that they have. And UnitedHealthcare says, actually, that's outside of the coverage, that's outside of the policy, and so they don't pay. That's what we're talking about here. According to Forbes, multiple reports say UnitedHealthcare does that at rates double the industry average. But they don't, I guess they link to one of these reports later, so I'll have to read it myself and assess the methodology and the truth of that statement. So one that they reference is from an analyst group called Value Penguin. And the other, I guess, is according to a Senate investigation. The Senate report had looked into the company and been critical of them for denying certain services to people who were on their Medicare Advantage plans. But this other report, the mention of it from Forbes has a pretty significant asterisk on it. Gauging an exact number of claim denials is tricky, as there's no central repository of this data. Okay, but everyone's taking it as though that's automatically true and verifiable. This is from Insurance Insights firm Value Penguin. But they did Value Penguin while saying, you can't really trust the information, but here's a report we built based on the information. Okay, I'm sure there's some truth to it. Okay, I don't think it's made up, but they're admitting their own methodologies are suspect, or at least have some weaknesses. They issued a report saying, UnitedHealthcare denies claims at rates that are among the highest in the industry, or at rates twice what other insurance providers do. Okay, let's say that UnitedHealthcare is denying people coverage. First of all, you could even take that premise. They're denying claims. Do we know that all those claims are valid claims? Not all denied claims are created equally. Some of them, I'm sure, are valid. Like, I have a policy with UnitedHealthcare. It's supposed to cover this. They're refusing to cover this. I'm being wrongfully denied. Of course, I'm sure that's happening. It could also be true that people making health insurance claims are trying to get coverage for services that their policies simply do not cover. Could be aesthetic things, could be cosmetic things, could be non-medical things, could be things they thought their policy covered, but in fact the policy does not because they simply misread it or misunderstood it. My point is, just because there's a denied claim doesn't mean that there's an injustice, while also acknowledging that, yes, I'm sure there are unjust denied claims too. But this, whenever we see this statement, oh, they deny claims at this rate, or he deserved it because of this policy. Okay, but we're assuming that every denied claim is a wrongfully denied claim, and that's not always true. But let's say that I'm cucking for the big business insurance companies. Fine. Let's take that point as granted, that UnitedHealthcare is a big abusive operation. They're wrongfully denying people. They're cashing in. The question for Taylor Lorenz and the rest of the people, as a practical matter, is, what is your alternative? What would you prefer? You want a government takeover of this industry? We already kind of have that. But Medicare for all, they keep posting. Do you really believe that bureaucrats in the place of people like Brian Thompson, they're going to take over and they're not going to deny care just as readily, probably more readily than these private providers? If you think these business leaders will happily kill your grandma, just wait until the smile you see from a government agent killing your grandma and then coming around to kill you next too. Because that's what you're going to get. You're not going to get improvement by handling this or handing this over to the government. Speaking of the government's role, why exactly do you think healthcare is so expensive? Yeah, it's a high demand, high skill industry. Market forces certainly apply. But why are insurance plans specifically so expensive? Do you think that the government requiring insurance companies to cover certain services with all of their policies, even if the consumer doesn't necessarily want coverage for that policy and would be willing to accept a policy without that particular coverage at a lower cost? You think the government stepping in and banning that sort of thing, setting the terms for the consumer, requiring the insurance provider to cover all these things, you think that increases the cost, or do you think it lowers the cost? Because more things forcibly covered means more risk taken on by the insurance company. More risk taken on by the insurance company means more money necessary to cover that risk. So you can blame corporate greed all you want, and yeah, I'm not saying it's a never event. I'm not saying wrongfully denied claims are never. I'm not saying insurance company greed is never a thing. I will say nobody has jacked up medical costs more than the government. That is a statement I am perfectly willing to stand behind. So be careful if your alternative to this unacceptable scenario is handing more power over to the government. Do you think killing people, for the people who are kind of enjoying this moment, you think killing people involved in the administration of healthcare is going to make healthcare cheaper and more accessible? And I know these people don't sympathize with the lives of people like Brian Thompson, that CEO, by their own description. But how about just on practical terms? Do you think that murdering people who work in providing healthcare services will bring more or fewer people into the market of providing healthcare services? If there are fewer, if perhaps they're afraid of being murdered, they're probably not inclined to provide those services, are they? That means those services are now more rare. If those services are now more rare, that means the government, or that means the service, of course, will become more expensive, less accessible. Or maybe their plan, it seems to me their plan is, no, we take guns and we point them at people and we make them do the healthcare services. We point guns at the doctors and we make them work. We point guns at the nurses, we make them work. We point guns at the insurance agents and we make sure they cover it. Yeah, what kind of service quality you think you're going to get at gunpoint? Not very good. But all of those are practical considerations with this position that they're taking. The moral position is, of course, the more significant one. Is it good or acceptable to kill people in this way or not? And again, I include myself in this consideration because I do believe that everybody has somebody, public figure or otherwise, who they would look at this particular arrangement and they might not feel particularly bad for that person, given the circumstances. You know, oh, he did X and then he was killed, so I'm not sad that he got killed. Now, I will counter this. I'll counter my own consideration here. And I think a consideration for a lot of people who are in this audience. Take Dr. Fauci, for example, and of course, Mr. Rajamohan and the forces that be. I am not calling for the death of Dr. Fauci. I'm just saying, if something like this happened, Dr. Fauci was taken out by somebody, there would be a lot of discussion. Oh, well, he did X, Y, and Z. And so, I'm not sad that happened. Taylor Lorenz, I presume, loves Dr. Fauci. She'd be very sad about that. She'd be opposed to him being gunned down in this way. Personally, I do think Dr. Fauci is a criminal for a number of reasons. I think he's committed all sorts of acts of abuse against the American public. I think he probably has caused death or suffering in the volume or the scale that Taylor Lorenz is talking about. But for justice, for a functional society, you have to be specific about the charge, and you have to be careful with the process for adjudicating it. So what is the crime that is committed? Of course, would be the question. What is the evidence for it? What is the appropriate punishment? With guilt or innocence, of course, assessed by a jury of peers who've considered all of that evidence. Otherwise, what do you got? If we don't go through that, if we're not specific about the crime, we don't care about the evidence, we don't care about the process for deciding guilt or innocence, what do you get? You get mob justice, and mob justice isn't justice. Also, a relevant question on the morality here. Where is the line for responsibility? Presumably, Brian Thompson didn't personally deny claims. Like, was he sitting there hitting the no button on his keyboard? Nope, not that one. No, not that. Presumably, some agent or a team of agents are in charge of assessing the validity of these claims. Should those people be executed? What about the person writing the insurance policy that, I guess, denied the claim? Should that person be executed? What about the lawyers who handle these policies, defend them in court? Should they be executed? What about Brian Thompson's secretary at the office who made his day-to-day easier? Should she be executed on the street of New York City? What about all the government policymakers who set the rules for companies like UnitedHealthcare? They're operating according to those rules. Is it okay to execute them on the streets? It's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. What connection is sufficiently specific? What connection is too ambiguous, too detached? What is the line for when it's acceptable to kill people in cold blood in this way? And that's why a justice system is important. Specific charge, evidence presented, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, judged by a jury of peers, and an appeal opportunity once you're actually sentenced. And the point is, even if you think Brian Thompson is a bad guy who did bad things, and maybe he is, all right? I don't know the guy. I don't know his practices. If you're like me, you think Dr. Fauci's a bad guy who did bad things, we still have to be very careful about endorsing vigilante justice in the form of killing someone in this way as a suitable solution. Now, sometimes it can be justified. Can a mob be correct when they take a person out and justice be served by a mob? Yes, it is possible. The point is the error rate on mob justice is higher than the error rate on trial by jury with a set of due process rules. So when we normalize the mob warfare, the mob justice system, we create chaos and, yes, war. We don't create order and justice. And I get it. Injustice is enraging. Injustice requires correction. There's a reason mobs get stirred up. There's a reason people don't feel sad sometimes when people die in this way. And that's because the injustice that they're perceived to have committed is enraging enough that people feel it's justified whatever happened to them. The point is, if we have a justice system that's based on impulse and anger, we're going to create only more injustice over time. We're not going to correct the problem. And the biggest incoherence in all of this, Taylor Lorenz and the rest of the people at this assassination party, the biggest incoherence in all of it is the position on guns. Oh, I hate guns. Well, they should be banned. We should take those guns away. Also, I like assassinations, at least against people I don't like. And I like setting up the circumstances for warfare and chaos. Both of which require what? Guns. If you want a person with a grievance like this assassin in New York to be able to assassinate, that requires the person to have access to a gun. A question for Lorenz and company, should the assassin who killed that guy, should he have access to a gun or not? And if you want to create a chaos world where people can just kill people they don't like for undefined reasons, and we call that justice, you're going to need a gun to defend yourself. The irony is, in this world that she's cultivating, Taylor Lorenz is surely a target. She complains about people harassing her. Then she celebrates someone's assassination. What if your critics, the ones you cried about on MSNBC, what if they came after you with guns in this way, Taylor Lorenz? I assure you, they think they are justified in the same way you think that guy was justified. And lastly, before I get into the break here, just the dichotomy coming out of New York City is amazing. Mostly Peaceful Memes account on X, they pointed this out. Just consider the state of the country with these two simultaneous stories. To many, the man on the left, the UnitedHealthcare assassin, he's actually a cold-blooded murderer. He's a hero to many. The man on the right is, in fact, a hero who protected others from an insane criminal. He's a cold-blooded murderer in the eyes of many. The truth, morality itself, absolutely inverted, and that's not just some kind of fringe take. It's not a bunch of like crazies and psychos who believe that. It's something close or something too close to half the country. It's a very popular viewpoint. So very dangerous times. But I gotta get into a break here. We gotta check in with our friend KnuckleHunkyBuck. So stand by. All right, false alarm. I guess HunkyBuck is not available. He sends his condolences. We'll see if we can get him back pursuant to our recurring Sunday bit next week. My apology on that. Some kind of duct tape going on. But I will catch up with your chats here before we bring in my friend NeoUnrealist. I'll start over on Rumble here. iBot. Well, it's... No, now he... Okay. Well, HunkyBuck is saying maybe he get... All right. I'm going to try once more. Stand by. You know, the duct tape is the charm, right? I'm coming back in just a moment. You hear me?
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Knuckles.
And now it's time for Super Chats with KnuckleHunkyBuck.
I'm a knucklehead at times.
You son of a bitch, you tried to blame that on me.
Sorry, I forgot I had to wear pants for this.
Oh.
I'm not used to wearing pants while I watch this Sunday stream.
You know, you haven't actually seen it yet, but I was telling you, like, it looks like I have a black eye.
Oh, I haven't seen it, have I?
So
sorry about that.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you beat my ass. Is that the bit?
Well, I mean, look, you ask for a 60-40 split. It's 50-50. I show up, I read some super chats. It's 50-50.
All right. Okay. A deal's a deal. A negotiation is a negotiation, and I can't be battered on my stream anymore. So I guess you win. We had talked about the possibility of some other one-liners. Are you ready? Did you not do it?
You suck. Fuck you.
I guess I don't remember the exact one-liner that you were looking for.
Oh, I didn't. I guess I didn't set up the bit correctly. I thought we were going to go, how did Matt get his black eye?
How did Matt get his black eye?
That was your job. Okay, read some super chats. It's 60-40 for sure now.
I probably just dropped it down to 30-70.
Okay.
All right. Rug burn from a yoga pose. This is Tortuga. And that's actually, I was going to try to fold it into this. I was going to have Tortuga.
Oh.
I saw this one up there, and then I was going to read his and then try to naturally lean into the bit. Anyways. So Tortuga. Rug burn from a yoga pose? Sure. And Rihanna fell down the stairs.
Well, see, the thing is, if I had to make up an excuse, would I really do something as gay as I attempted an impossible yoga pose?
Why are you gay?
Well, the audience has to believe it. So, yeah, yoga pose is probably a good excuse.
Oh, maybe. All right. Thank you, Tortuga.
You taking Joe Schmo, or should I?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Speaking of the rules, thank you for keeping me on track. Joe Schmo says, there are a bunch of drones flying all over my house, apparently all of New Jersey. No one seems to have any answer as to why these things are flying over us. I'm sure it's totally cool and def not aliens. Well, don't shoot them like that guy did, in Florida. You know, you get in trouble for that.
Yeah, it's a federal offense to interfere with the flight of an aircraft. So if you're about to get arrested and you have a little quadcopter, pull out your phone and start flying. Cops can't arrest you, or they're committing a felony.
Well, that's a very GTA style escape too. Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah, you can just go waltzing, just walking through on your way, and just as long as you keep that quadcopter in the air. All right, Esoterica Unbound. Matt makes fun of Go to Dicks after bragging about having rug burn on his face. I assume that he has decided to go blue in a bid to increase the number of viewers.
Like I said, if I was going to make up falsehoods, I wouldn't be so gay about it. I'd think of something more complimentary instead of making a mockery of myself in this way. I didn't invent the dicks thing. Okay, turn on your TV. They tell you go to dicks.com, and I'm telling you, few are brave enough to do it.
Well, and going blue, nobody's that's not in style right now. Going blue. I mean, Kamala was such a bad candidate that even Democrats were flipping in their graves.
Oh wait, I hit the wrong button. I meant to give you a sad trombone. Whatever. All right, Injured Guardian says, Matt, how can Aussies pronounce balls like that? I guess I don't know how they pronounce it. They're motivated by, did I say that? Was that a quote I said? I don't know. They're motivated by envy after having lost a war to birds. P.S. Respectfully, is that a no to numbering Sunday episodes? It's useful. I like the date better, personally. I find more utility to the date than the number. Just my personal taste. So yes, unfortunately, I am rejecting the concept of numbering the episodes, especially because I kind of have two iterations of this show. Like there's the Sunday production, the Wednesday one. They're similar, but they are a little bit different format. So I just like the date. So I don't have to have do I do two separate numbers? Do I number them the same? I don't know. So no, I'm going with the date.
All right. Ooga Boogaloo. Matt and I once made art. We did yoga on top of some canvas. He got a sweet burn, and I got to pass off the mess as a Hunter Biden painting.
All right. Sorry, I got to make sure my guest is good to go. I'm a little bit late for him, but let's get a few more, and then I'll move over to bring him in here so I don't waste his time. But I'm going to move over to Rumble quickly. We got Elbot, traditionally no note. Appreciate you.
I am not going to be niggardly.
All right, we got Yakko 1977. I don't deny that Assad was essentially a despot, but I do wonder why people are celebrating his fall from power when the radical Islamists replacing him are likely going to be worse. It's insanity.
Yeah, it is going to be very interesting to see who the new regime in Syria is and who benefits and, who designed all of this, I suppose. Raymond Donovan is gay. So sick of celebrating murder. Nobody should play God in choosing who lives and dies. That responsibility lies solely with the AI algorithm employed by the insurers to maximize profits over health. Yeah, of course, I'm not. I wouldn't say that you can't criticize the policy or you can't have problems with the way that they've made these assessments. But to your original point, yeah, deciding that you alone as a vigilante get to take that person's life because of a policy at an insurance company, even if there was a justification in that particular action, get ready for a war world because that's what we're cultivating. So we'll see how this goes.
All right. I've got Raymond Donovan is gay. So sick we are celebrating murder. Nobody should.
Oh, no, that's the one I got. Yeah, I just read that one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was distracted by something.
You were distracted like Russia by the Ukrainian war. You couldn't help Assad anymore.
No, that was. I read Yakko 1977. Weren't you?
But I read Raymond. So you got Hillbilly.
I'm sorry. Okay, the Hillbilly Deluxe. Colion Noir.
Colion Noir. The gun tuber.
Colion Noir. Said there is a booster that should be used with a suppressor that prevents the problem with cycling rounds.
Yeah, and now they're saying that he used this kind of strange World War II era weapon. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just what they're saying. So was it malfunction? Was it the weapon design? They haven't found the gun yet, so as far as I'm aware, not confirmed.
Okay.
Your friendly neighborhood Fed for KHB.
Fed.
One of his true classics. For KnuckleHunkyBuck. Yeah. When life gives you Don Lemon, give Lemon AIDS. Now I'm off to return to the office for 1 day a week until Doge forces me back. Merry Christmas, you filthy animals. I actually prepped that one. I figured people would.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal.
People would start issuing Christmas greetings, so I thought I should be prepared. Yes, you are.
How many sounders do you readily have?
Way too many. Like
Nice.
Probably 100.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I need to I need to get rid of some, but some I just can't.
You talk like a fag, and your shit's all retarded.
Go home, bitch.
Kill me!
I have a million of them. Who knows? I should just deploy it at random. But yes, one of your all-time, not just one of your all-time, one of the best all-time chats in the history of the show. When life gives you Don Lemon, give Lemon AIDS.
Arguably the line that eventually got me this gig.
For now. Until you punch me in the face again.
Hey, we're going to go 70-30 in my favor.
All right. Lastly, Dick Boner.
All right. They're jihadis. We backed them for years. Bibi asked Trump not to leave. Shapiro's sentiment shared by many Israelis. One genocide bad, others are good. Read Pearl's A Clean Break, the plan to exploit us.
All right. I'll take your recommendation for it. And thank you for your support for the show. And of course, your delightful username, Dick Boner. I wonder if he has dickboner.com. Dicks.com. He's got dickboner.com. What do you think?
Favorite website name, probably mattis.gay. That's a good one.
Thank you. That's the correct answer. All right. Well, thank you for your contributions this evening, as always. Very much appreciated. And I suppose I will see you next week.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right, there he goes, KnuckleHunkyBuck.
I'm a knucklehead at times.
And I will see if I can get my guest in to discuss our next piece of news. Stand by once more. I'll be right back. All right, hello, sir. Sorry for making you wait.
No problem.
Well, my friend NeoUnrealist is a streamer who is often covering stories of the day in great detail, feeding me information personally I often find useful in making my own material. And lately, he's been following the international effort to crack down on social media companies for censorship, even here in the U.S. Neo, thanks for joining, man. It's good to hear from you.
As always.
Before we get into the international censorship effort, I know you're a New York guy. Do you have any thoughts on the New York news, as in the Daniel Penny trial and the CEO assassination?
I know you mentioned earlier in the show about the constitutionality. I think you were trying to get at the double jeopardy kind of angle.
On Penny, yeah.
Well, I thought of a different thing where we have a trial where they've dismissed the main charge, the manslaughter, correct?
So far, although the judge is saying like maybe that's a legal problem because the jury didn't actually acquit on that charge.
So that's the thing. If you're Daniel Penny and his defense, this is not fair. This is, I would think this is appealable. They were in court defending against that charge. If they're saying to the jury in midstream, oh, by the way, throw that out. Let's consider the criminally negligent homicide. Well, you might have had a totally different defense because it's a way different standard, and you might have said, well, it's a lower risk. This crime only has a 4-year penalty as opposed to a 20 or 30. Maybe I testify my own defense.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I understand, they can bring a lower charge in New York. I'm not a New York lawyer, so obviously consult your favorite New York lawyer. I'm not aware necessarily of a legal problem on that, but maybe there is.
It certainly does change your calculus on risk and the strategy you might take at trial.
Yeah, well, and of course, I would grant the premise that these people are thinking strategically, not with legal fidelity. They want to make an example of Daniel Penny, and so however they do that, legal norms be damned. But you got any hot CEO assassination takes?
Well, pure speculation on my part, but you mentioned that they keep coming up with these Atlanta angles on this guy.
Mm-hmm.
At first, I think it was my younger sister suggested that the whole, deny depose stuff on the shell casings may have been a false flag, where maybe it was his estranged wife hiring somebody. But if you take it at face value that this is some disgruntled, presumably left-wing person who doesn't like, health insurance companies, and if he is in fact out of Atlanta, doesn't this point to the certain profile of upper, you mentioned the gun he bought being very rare. I imagine it's not cheap. He's wearing what some people were speculating were $1,000 sneakers. What profile do we know of upper middle class to wealthy white leftists based out of Atlanta that like to put people against the wall to stop cop people?
Well, I remember Tortuguita, when they were trying to stop the Forest Training Center for the police. And the trans activist, all cops are bastards guy got shot in the non-binary female nut while shooting at police. So are those the people you're talking about?
Yes, the Atlanta, now renowned as the most radical, hardcore Antifa outlet on the East Coast.
Yeah. Yeah, could be. Maybe there is a connection there. But all right, so you were mentioning that you've been following this international effort to put pressure on social media companies to censor, not just in places overseas, but to censor here in the United States. Maybe this is a strategy after a lot of censorship efforts domestically here have fallen apart. Walk me through your theory and what the latest developments are in Australia and beyond.
Yeah, obviously, you're a YouTuber in this space. You follow this stuff, and you've seen that. I was put onto this when I just saw Michael Schellenberger, I think, on some interview somewhere. He sounded the alarm on the bill, and apparently the Australia, it's called the Combating Misinformation and Disinformation Bill. It's actually an amendment to an already existing law, so you have to look at the 2024 amendment, and it purports to essentially have Australia be the arbiter of all things truth, essentially. So to walk you through this, I first noticed this with the Nina Jankowicz story.
Oh, yes. I'm still waiting to talk to Nina Jankowicz, because that's the only hit piece I've received, and I'm really proud of it, that Nina Jankowicz personally wrote about me. It was the honor of the year.
I'm surprised she didn't make it in the form of a song.
That would have been,
lady.
Yeah, that would have been amazing. But yeah, maybe someday, Nina.
You sound like a hysterical bleeping snowflake lesbo bleep.
So how did Nina get you into this story?
Well, essentially, she's one of these international disinformation specialists, if you want. I don't know, for lack of a better word. She wrote a book, How to Lose the Information War. She's clearly a partisan. I think the Biden administration, they grabbed her, believe it or not, she was actually working for the State Department in Ukraine. So it's always the Biden administration.
Yeah, this photo of her, 2019, at Zelensky's campaign headquarters in Kyiv.
It always comes back to Ukraine with Biden.
Yeah.
But anyway, they announced that they're forming this disinformation governance board. So they picked the most Orwellian name you could imagine. It didn't go over well, and within 3 weeks, you remember they had to kill it.
Yeah.
So then you move on to Elon Musk a few months later. He buys Twitter and he announces the Twitter files, showing how the White House, the congressional staffers, the FBI, they all had direct inroads into Twitter. People they could call. They had a website portal for them to directly request accounts, posts to take them down. You remember that?
Yeah.
And you had Mark Zuckerberg. He later came out and wrote a letter to Congress, to the House Judiciary Committee, saying, yeah, you know what? They kind of pressured me too. I'm sorry I caved into the pressure to suppress that Hunter Biden laptop story. I should have pushed back harder, and it was wrong. So he wrote that mea culpa letter.
Yeah.
And so here in the United States, it's clear the public wasn't buying the censorship crap. Not popular, not working. And now with Trump in power, that's been closed out. They have Congress. Trump's never going to allow such legislation to go through, and they have the Supreme Court. So they've taken it international. You had this lady on the European Union, Thierry Breton. She wrote a letter to Elon Musk when he had his little conversation with Donald Trump, the first one on X. Basically a mafia shakedown, saying you have to comply with EU law. How dare you talk to Donald Trump? She essentially is threatening to get him. Elon Musk famously posts a letter to his X account, puts the meme of Les Grossman in the movie Tropic Thunder.
I have seen that one. Yeah.
Exactly. Go F your own face.
Yeah.
They sicked the Brazilian judge on him, Count Dracula, Alexander de Moraes. Elon had to cave on that one, sadly. They wanted 10 to 20 Brazilian politicians banned off of X, essentially. Globally, not just in Brazil. Elon essentially had to cave because it was basically either ban these politicians or ban all of Brazil. And also, by the way, get $1 million fine a day or whatever he was threatening. So in October, there was a cabal of British and American activists exposed. Both countries, you have members of the government, politicians, NGOs, crisscrossing the Atlantic, having meetings. And number one on their agenda, literally, this was on their meeting agenda, kill Musk's Twitter. So this Australia is...
When they say that, do they mean Musk's Twitter, the website, or do they mean his personal feed?
They want to regain control of the narrative, so they want the platform.
They want the whole platform. It's not just like a thing. It's him personally, insofar as he is, the owner, or he bought it. But it's not limited to just like his mouthpiece.
So here's how they're doing it. Now, the latest incarnation is they've moved to Australia now because, the thing in Britain, that lady, after she wrote that letter, she got fired for a different reason. It was also, it looked bad publicly. Hey, you're trying to blackmail Elon Musk. So what they're doing in Australia is this bill would define misinformation and disinformation so broadly and vaguely that it could basically be anything. But they go even a step further. It's not just misinformation and disinformation. it's also true and accurate information that could be deemed misleading.
Deemed by whom? Them?
Well, essentially, think about it. Crime statistics published by the government.
Yeah, well, your interpretation of it is incorrect. Yeah, I could see that.
And if that wasn't bad enough, they go a step further. Just basically any information deemed harmful, which could be anything and anyone.
Seriously harmful. Mis and disinformation poses a threat to safety, the integrity of elections, democracy, and national security. And 80% of Australians want action. They have polling showing 80% of Australians are begging for censorship.
Exactly. And here's the other thing. It's not like it would be government people that you could vote for and be accountable. They wanted to ship this out to the Australian Communications and Media Authority, another, non-governmental organization, unaccountable. You can't vote for the people on it. They're going to have oversight and be the arbiters of truth. And oh, by the way, this bill doesn't just apply to Australia. It's global. You have to follow Australian law. You have a First Amendment there. No, you don't. So by this theory, you have to follow the lowest common denominator law. If Communist China passes a law, basically governing speech, you have to now calibrate the entire global internet to Communist China's standards on censorship. So that's a problem.
But there's no, wait, why would they pursue that though? I don't understand. What is it, just a business reality that they don't want to make 50 different versions of the platform? Or is there any regulatory reason they would have to appease the strictest policy in that way?
Well, they have, this is the actual text of the law. Extraterritorial operation, Clause 3, extends operation of Schedule 9 to acts, omissions, matters, and things outside of Australia. Schedule 9 is intended to apply to digital communications platform providers domiciled both within and outside Australia. The purpose of this clause is to ensure regulatory provisions will not be interpreted so to be applied only to acts, omissions, matters, and things donated or situated within Australia. Essentially, you know how the internet works. If you're put something on, it's on for everybody.
Yeah. Well, why wouldn't Elon Musk just say, okay, if you don't want X, too damn bad, Australia doesn't get X then? For what reason would he comply with that?
Really, that's his only option. Essentially, it's either you strip the entire service from Australia, or you have to comply by their laws. Now, maybe Australia is not the biggest market in the world. Maybe you can live without it. There's certainly a case to be made where, okay, it's not that big a market, we can let it go. But at what point does that, if they all hold together on that, are you going to lose Australia, the United Kingdom, the European Union? And essentially, they would basically try to isolate you to the United States only. So far,
sounds awesome. I can't wait. This sounds great. I'm sold now.
Basically, our free speech depends on the willingness and tenacity of one man, Elon Musk, who owns Twitter.
Yeah.
Because he's the one that really, Zuckerberg, even though he's saying the right thing, I think it's Elon Musk that's kind of forcing him to take that route, because it would look bad if he didn't.
Yeah. So if I understand this correctly, your interpretation of this, or what you think they're doing, they're going to leverage what market force they have to try to push censorship on the rest of the world. Even if in Australia's case, they're a much smaller country and it'd be like kind of carving out a state, or a very large state in this country. But if they all combine, like say Australia, the UK, a lot of Europe, a lot of these more censorship friendly places, if they were to combine to put pressure on social media to say, you're going to do what we want you to do, or you're going to be out of our market, that maybe just the raw market forces would be sufficient to get what they want. Is that the idea?
Yeah. And just to let you know, this law, it did not pass in Australia.
Yeah. Well, I thought 80% of Australians wanted it. How could they must have been wrong.
It proved that their own governing coalition got nervous about it and just said, no, we're not doing this.
Did they get nervous for political reasons, or because they actually have some moral concern or philosophical concern with censorship?
It seems like, at least for some of them, it was genuinely, hey, this sounds kind of Orwellian. We're essentially setting up a ministry of truth.
Yeah.
And we're saying that we're the global governors of what truth is.
So they actually maybe had a realization philosophically. Interesting.
Well, I said some of them because they're not giving up. They're going to try to bring this back up in the next session. But the wrinkle is there may be a new election before they get that chance in February. So
okay.
The last thing they did, but just as an addendum for the last item, that got shot down, and boom, right away they have another setup in the UK where they're handing new powers to some again another non-government entity to regulate speech in the U.S. I think it's the last link I sent you.
Yeah, I got it. It's reported here at the end of November, so really recent.
And this one, obviously, Starmer is the head of the UK government. He could push it through, so it's not like you could stop it. And it just never ends. And it's the same thing. And here we have essentially an American activist went over there, and he actually wrote the law for them. So
who is this person? You know anything about him or her?
Well, he's. I wish I remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but he's basically another Nina Jankowicz type, where this is disinformation. They really believe in this guy. I mean, the First Amendment means nothing to these people.
Is it this guy Furman, Harvard professor, former Obama official? Is that who you're referencing?
That's the guy.
Okay.
And essentially, he pretty much wrote, or at least this particular section of the law, I think. And they directly target it so that they make it clear they're targeting Twitter, because they say it applies to platforms with this many users, which they're all American. There's no European Twitter. I mean, if you're talking about platforms of that size, you're talking about Twitter, Facebook, and all that. They want control of the narrative. They've lost it. They know it. And we're essentially, if Elon Musk gets hit by a bus tomorrow and he's replaced with somebody that's less concerned about free speech issues, we're done.
Yeah, I mean, I've been intermittently Elon critical since the purchase of X. I think he's made some mistakes here and there, but I think overall, obviously, I think he's done a great job in restoring the platform, and I'm glad that he's had it. I don't think that he personally is the kind of guy that would succumb to this sort of pressure. But to your point, he is just one man. And as we've seen, there have been attempts to replace just one man recently. Or in the case of UnitedHealthcare, one man was replaced for, reasons of a particular individual's grievance. So if it's just a guy who is the thin line between these forces of censorship and, say, protecting the U.S. market from it, that is rather flimsy.
Well, if you remember when Jack Dorsey ran a platform, I don't think Jack Dorsey himself was all that much into censorship, but he certainly wasn't willing to resist it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do get the sense based on what he said that he was kind of actually oblivious, that he was just like doing weird drugs in a cave in some, like in the Himalayas or whatever the hell he was doing, that he wasn't paying a lot of attention in the day to day. Now that doesn't relieve him of accountability, since he was the CEO and he should have known what was going on. But you go back and watch that interview with him and Vijay, whatever her name was, the lady running Twitter, when they went on Timcast. It does seem pretty clear to me that Jack didn't know a lot about how his company was working.
Well, I suspect that there's still people like that at X. And
or was that Joe Rogan with Tim Pool there?
Joe Rogan invited Tim Pool.
Yeah, that's right.
And I suspect that if, like, Elon Musk were to, even if he, forget even going away, if he were to get busy, let's say he refocuses on Doge or going to Mars or whatever, you know how it works. Day to day, the people that work there are going to slowly reimpose their, the way they like to run things.
Yeah. Well, thanks for walking me through it, man. Is there anything else you wanted to mention that we didn't cover?
With regard to your question on the timing of the Syria stuff, I may have some insight into that.
Yeah, if you got a thought, go for it.
It's not just about this where Hezbollah was going to war with Israel. I mean, that was like going on for 3 months. They did take a lot of casualties. The operation with the beepers and all that knocked out about 5,000 fighters. The word is that they lost another 4,000 in the actual war itself of the Israeli invasion. So they really were in no position to go help. But really the trigger was the fact that the Syrian army was actually preparing to go and invade Idlib, which is where HTS, their little stronghold is.
Mm-hmm.
And the Russian Air Force had already started bombing in preparation to that. And the little thing that you overlook is that a big thing in Syria is these tribes that, if basically think Lawrence of Arabia, you have these Bedouin tribes that they
I
actually
refuse
play a
to
big
think of that
role.
movie. It's one of the worst I've ever seen. But go on.
So you have these tribes that there was one major tribe around Aleppo. The name escapes you, the specific tribe. There's so many. But they had kind of a split where half of them were for the government and half weren't. And apparently the guy who led that particular tribe that was for Assad, either because he was disgruntled or maybe he sensed the way the wind was blowing, decided to call his tribe mates that were in the other camp, which was HTS, and say, hey, by the way, I'm not happy here. If you want, I can get some of your sleeper cells into Aleppo, and if you want to do something, now is the time. And it seems like they took that opportunity. The Turks, who essentially, I don't want to say they weren't involved, or I don't think they knew that the attack was going to happen, but they certainly did take advantage, Turkey, and launched a second pincer movement on Aleppo when they saw that the rebels were moving on it. And the Syrian army, I don't know if you have any knowledge of the history of Arab armies. They're renowned for losing wars quickly. I mean, the Syrian
Except
army
in this case, though, they lasted for a decade.
Well, it's not. They didn't really do the fighting. And remember,
Who was Assad deploying if not them to take care of all these factions?
Well, you got to remember there hasn't actually been any real fighting for 4 years.
Yeah, I guess
Russia
it's been dormant.
So Hezbollah was able to go back to Lebanon. The IRGC that was able to pull out. So for the last 4 years, it's been pretty much, I don't want to say peaceful, mostly peaceful, but there hasn't been any major offensives.
Yeah.
But the Syrian army is an army on paper. I mean, I saw an estimate where only about a third of the actual soldiers were on duty that would be listed as active duty, because they would just bribe their commanders. Hey, I don't want to guard this desert outpost. I'm going to go get a job in Damascus.
Yeah, they were doing like our federal workers, they were working from their bubble
remote.
baths.
Exactly.
But, all right,
and
man.
if you had them, that was basically it.
Yeah, I appreciate the insight on the censorship effort and on all these other stories. So thank you again for joining this evening. It's NeoUnrealist. I've linked his YouTube, Rumble, and X channels in the description if you'd like to check him out. Again, very thoroughly detailed. And if you want deep dives into topics, Neo is your man. But Neo, is there anywhere else you'd like to direct people to find your material?
No, those are the main ones. YouTube, Rumble, Twitter. I mean, there are others, but very rarely use them.
All right. Well, I'll catch you on Twitter sometime soon, and I hope you'll come back to the show as well. I appreciate your contribution.
Thank you.
Now see yourself out of this Zoom call. Have a good night.
Good night.
There he goes. NeoUnrealist. Again, find the links to his material in the description. But I got some more news items for you before we're out of here for the evening. Actually, I got to take care of one thing here. Technical break. Make sure I don't set myself up for duct tape related failures moving forward. Okay, there we go. But I wanted to check in on the status of the Defense Secretary nominee, Pete Hegseth, because that battle continues. And on Wednesday, when last I visited this story, I discussed that report from NBC that said 6 unnamed Republican senators were opposed to or were at least hesitant about Trump's defense secretary pick, Pete Hegseth. Now, recall, Pete Hegseth is a boob toucher. Pete Hegseth is a raging alcoholic, according to mostly people who won't go on the record to make those accusations, at least with their real identities. I also mentioned the reporting that Trump says, or the reporting at least was saying Trump is considering Ron DeSantis as a possible replacement for Pete Hegseth due to the political obstacles facing Pete in the first few weeks of his nomination here. It looks like Trump, if he is considering DeSantis, it's only if Hegseth fails at an actual confirmation vote, which was my hope. I hope that Trump doesn't bail on Pete prematurely. I hope that Pete doesn't withdraw his own name prematurely. Insert your own joke about whatever, premature withdrawal, whatever, wherever I was going with that. I don't even know. But it sounds like if Trump is considering DeSantis or anybody else, it's in the event that Pete gets rejected by the Senate. It's not to do so ahead of time. And so Trump is saying he stands by Pete Hegseth strongly and deeply, according to his statement. Quote, Pete Hegseth is doing very well. His support is strong and deep, much more so than the fake news would have you believe. This in a Truth Social post. Great student, Princeton, Harvard educated, military state of mind, fantastic energy. Anyway, I support Pete fully. Trump was saying on Friday. So we move on to the next hit piece because boob toucher, drunk, some of that is sticking, but it's not sticking enough. Enter the Washington Post this week. Now it's that the military decorations that he has, those aren't very impressive, actually. On Thursday, the Washington Post published a story. Bronze stars, like those that Pete Hegseth earned, they're actually common among military officers. You go to the story, read some of it here. I didn't get this part. Let me find the particular part of the story. I want to make sure I quote the right part. Sorry, I didn't prep this ahead of time, apparently. Here we go. Supporters point to his... hold on.
You suck, fuck you.
That's the quote. Oh, yeah, okay. This is the subheading. I just want to make sure I quote the story correctly. Supporters point to his wartime decorations in declaring him qualified to lead the Defense Department. Military experts say that doing so distorts these medals' significance, or those medals' significance. And the quote in the story here, military experts say there is a mistaken belief among much of the American public that the Bronze Star is a rarefied award exclusively for battlefield heroics, which has distorted and inflated its significance in many cases. The U.S. military issues two versions of the award, the Bronze Star, one with a V device denoting valor in combat, and the other for commendable job performance on deployments, or meritorious service in military parlance. The Bronze Stars listed in Hegseth's official record fall into the latter category, according to his official service record. Such awards were issued somewhat liberally throughout the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, experts say. Awardees of these meritorious service medals are predominantly military officers like Hegseth, data provided by the military shows. While many officers have risked their lives on the battlefield, the majority of the fighting and exposure to danger is performed by the enlisted troops they command. Hegseth also received a Combat Infantryman badge, which is awarded when infantry soldiers and officers engage an enemy in combat. So in other words, he did the job honorably and with recognition and merit. There's another way to phrase that. A very strange rationale from the Washington Post here, because the constant Democrat appeal is just how ordinary they are. Oh, I'm Kamala Harris. I'm so ordinary that I grew up in a middle-class household where people were very proud of their lawns. And that ordinariness is what makes me relatable. In fact, it's a political asset. Now Pete Hegseth is ordinary, according to the Washington Post, and that's bad. Except he's not ordinary, of course, at least insofar as he served in the military, honorably. That actually is rare these days. Even fewer receive recognition when they do. And if these awards are so common, you get a Bronze Star, you get a Bronze Star, everyone gets a Bronze Star. They just Oprah'd a bunch of Bronze Stars. How many Bronze Star recipients are walking around the halls of the Washington Post, the people writing these articles? How many Bronze Stars participated in the writing of this article? This is actually a good sign. If you're a Hegseth supporter, and I would consider myself a supporter of his, I like anybody else, I have some questions around the edges, but I think he's a good guy with the right ideas, and I think he served his country honorably, and I think he would take the Defense Department in the right direction. And so, in that regard, he has my support. If you are the sort of person who is worried about his nomination, that there's a bunch of political opposition to it, like was reported this week, I take reporting like this as a good sign, because that shows me that they're out of boob touching and raging alcoholic stories, and now they're moving on to actually his military decorations aren't that impressive. Okay, good luck. I'm sure that one's going to sell. I'm sure senators are going to vote against him. I'm not impressed by your Bronze Stars. They're actually the Bronze Stars that don't count. Yeah, good luck with that strategy. But I regret to inform you on the Hegseth topic, and as it relates to Ron DeSantis, John Fetterman, the strokey senator from Pennsylvania, he's had another actually cool moment. Despite that strokey brain, he does have these moments occasionally. He's been having a lot of them lately. And he really does it when he's ripping either party, all right? It's not just that he's making points that I agree with necessarily. He rips Democrats, he rips Republicans, and he's actually pretty funny when he does it a lot of the time. In this case, he was talking to reporters about his possible support for Ron DeSantis for defense secretary if Pete Hegseth isn't confirmed and that becomes a reality. And John Fetterman said, well, hey, maybe I will support Ron DeSantis, but only if Ron DeSantis admits that he is wearing lifts in his boots.
I'm considering voting yes on DeSantis if he finally admits that he has lifts in his boots. I'm sure he does. I think maybe 3 inches, 4 inches at least, yeah.
Got him! Got him!
We'll see if that demand comes to fruition. And I got to check my Fetterman appreciation. He is still a commie Democrat, okay? I think the only differentiator that gives him some appeal, some charm, is the fact that he actually has a sense of humor. That does go a long way in a completely humorless party, regardless of whether I agree with your politics or not. I can appreciate that. We have a COVID revelation. Actually, it's not much of a revelation, but it is an official finding that is notable. Because quietly this week, the House Oversight Committee released the 500-page report on its 2-year investigation into COVID and the lessons we can learn from it. And among the findings and conclusions from this congressional investigation, a lab-related incident involving gain-of-function research is most likely the origin of COVID-19. And yes, we paid for all kinds of gain-of-function research in Wuhan, despite a legal ban on the practice in the U.S. at the time. Once again, yesterday's bannable tinfoil is today's congressionally confirmed truth. We paid probably millions of dollars for a multi-year investigation that you could have just gone to YOLO SwagBro69 on Twitter to learn all about in April 2020. But of course, he was banned for saying what the Congressional Oversight Committee is saying now. And maybe we're not done. Maybe we're not done with the man-made viruses or facilitated viral events. Recall Dr. Peter Hotez, one of the vax-worshipping doctors who insistently pushed all sorts of insanity and hysteria during the COVID era. Well, this week on MSNBC, he warned that a series of viruses are coming next year, and we will all learn the hard way if Trump doesn't get serious about them.
Here's the reason why we need to care about this stuff. We have some big picture stuff coming down the pike starting on January 21st. H5N1, that I'm really worried about. It's all over wild birds on the western part of the United States and going up in the north. It's getting into the poultry. It's in the cattle. It's in the milk. And that's just the beginning. We have another major coronavirus likely brewing in Asia. We've had SARS in 2002, SARS-2, COVID-19 in 2019. And we know these viruses are jumping from bats to people thousands of times a year, but there's still more. We know that we have a big problem with mosquito-transmitted viruses all along the Gulf Coast, possibly Zika virus coming back, or a Puche virus, maybe even yellow fever. And there's more. Then we have all this sharp rise in vaccine-preventable diseases going up because of, in part, the anti-vaccine activism that's so prominent right now. All that's going to come crashing down on January 21st on the Trump administration.
If that sounds suspicious, that he knows all these things are coming, well, no, you didn't hear what you just heard, actually, because we all need to consult the PolitiFact fact check. No, vaccine researcher Dr. Peter Hotez didn't threaten to unleash viruses after Trump takes office. If your time is short, Hotez didn't threaten to unleash the viruses when Trump comes around. The viruses he mentioned are already in circulation. Yeah, I know. We've heard of those before. The question is, why is he saying these viruses are going to become very threatening and prominent specifically on January 21st? Now, if I want to be charitable, he's saying that the incoming administration is not going to treat these matters seriously. And so when these viruses do show up, not specifically January 21st, but in the general future where Trump is president, January 21st is just a stand-in to represent that. All right, I'll take that charitably, but how am I going to be mad at anybody who has some questions or suspicions about this guy saying, yo, there's a whole bunch of diseases and viruses coming for when Trump takes office? Okay, I'm going to have some questions about that, whether he unleashes them himself or not. Seems like very specific knowledge that he's offering there. But of course, he's on Twitter, Peter Hotez. He's got the PolitiFact fact check. He's on Twitter saying, "Oh my God, how it's awful how extremist media misrepresented my comments. I didn't say that I was going to unleash them. I just said they're coming at some point in the future." And then he's complaining about death threats. "Oh no, I'm getting death threats. I'm getting death threats." Those aren't death threats, Peter. Those are observations about a naturally occurring death that will happen on a specific date in the future. Just like you said, it's not a death threat. It's just someone, hey, here's a very specific time at which you may pass away. That's all. Just like it's a very specific time at which a whole bunch of viruses might show up in the country and become uncontrollable because the president we elected is incapable of managing them like you and your genius friends do. Anyway, that will bring us to tonight's hoax hate entry.
And now, the nobody saw it happen, but it's totally a product of Trump's America hoax hate crime of the week.
Ah, shit, it's backwards. You think they'll notice?
At Salisbury University in Maryland, or is it Salisbury? I don't know how you pronounce that. It's a college in Maryland. 15 students are suspected in a bizarre assault case that was originally presented as a hate crime, but now prosecutors are dropping hate crime charges. In October, these students allegedly lured a man to an apartment where police say the group punched, kicked, and spit on him. This is a gay man that they lured to this apartment. Now, originally, police believe the students targeted the man because of his sexual orientation, leading to, initially, hate crime charges that are now dropped. The state attorney's office said on Friday, quote, "They have reviewed the evidence. The office has reviewed the evidence gathered during the course of the investigation, and we have charged as appropriate in light of that evidence." So they have more information and they're saying, hate crime case, not very strong. So what happened then? Why did these college kids lure, capture, and beat up this gay guy, if not hate for the gays? Well, scroll down through the story. This is in the Washington Post, so you got to do that to find the relevant information. Okay. The case came to light in October when two witnesses who had seen videos of the alleged assault reported it to university police, who contacted law enforcement. One of the students posed as a 16-year-old on Grindr, a messaging app for LGBTQ people. Is that what Grindr is? It's a messaging app. Wanted to meet the man. The student and the man then made plans for an off-campus apartment. They made plans to meet at an off-campus apartment building for a sexual encounter on October 15th. Oh, so that's what the messaging was about on Grindr. A sexual encounter. Thank you for clarifying. A group of as many as 15 students surrounded the man when he entered the apartment and forced him to sit in a chair in the middle of a living room. The students called the man derogatory names.
You're a faggot.
Made him read a weather report and threw him to the ground, according to court records, refusing to let him leave. One used a cooking sheet to hit the man multiple times. After several minutes, they did let him flee. So how old is this guy that they beat up? They lured him with a 16-year-old, or who he believed to be a 16-year-old on Grindr. How old is this guy? Unspecified in the story, as far as I see. Why is an adult man picking up a 16-year-old for gay sex on Grindr? Now, the age of consent in Maryland is 16, so there's nothing technically illegal about that, as far as I understand. Certainly worthy of some questions, though. This looks a lot like a Chris Hansen-style sting operation gone crazy. Now, 16-year-old is not necessarily pedophile territory, but why is an adult man meeting a 16-year-old for gay sex? And those are the circumstances that led to him being beat up. Either this gay guy was on the prowl for very young men, the youngest available to him under the law, or these guys who went after him, they had some other reason to go after him, and baiting him with this young man bait was the way to get him. But whatever happened here, clearly it's not a mob of homophobic college students who captured and beat a random gay guy because he's gay. There are still charges in this case, so they're not going to get away with, what is, I guess, an assault case and some sort of false imprisonment or kidnapping or whatever the charge would be for not letting him go, at least for a few minutes while they were doing their mob justice thing. Based on the description, it is an attack, okay? But clearly this was not an unprovoked hate crime. Prosecutors have dropped those charges. There is much more to this story than what was originally presented. What exactly this guy was doing that caused this group to intervene needs to come out. But for the last few weeks, I have been following this case of the Colorado Springs mayor, Yemi Mobolade. He was elected as the first black mayor of Colorado Springs last year. As you've maybe heard me discuss, in November, 3 people were federally indicted for faking a hate incident by burning a cross and spray painting the N-word on a Mobolade, I'll never pronounce the name correctly, Mobolade campaign sign. Initial reports said Mobolade had no involvement, which, as I said at the time, makes no sense because nobody fakes a hate crime on someone else's behalf. On behalf of a candidate they have no personal involvement with. A few weeks ago, there was that report from the Daily Wire that cited an unnamed FBI source saying Mobolade, the mayor, had lied to the FBI, that actually he had been in contact with the people who did this hoax hate crime on his behalf, and they have text message and phone call records that show that. But according to this unnamed FBI source, the FBI, the Justice Department, they let him off the hook because they didn't want the optics of criminally charging Colorado Springs' first black mayor, the first black mayor of the city. So when I last checked in with this story, I think it was last weekend, Mobolade had released a written statement denying knowledge or involvement. Not much detail beyond that, though. This week he posted a video message turning what is almost certainly a hoax hate crime organized by him, at least in part, into, yes, more victimization of himself. He says the allegations are false, and now all these false allegations have inspired threats against him, or at least he doesn't feel safe in the community.
These allegations came about when the outlet The Daily Wire published an article last month. They cite an anonymous FBI source who alleges Mobolade lied to the Bureau about his contacts with one of those suspects accused in this hoax. The mayor says that's not true.
I had no knowledge, warning, or involvement in this crime. I did not lie to the FBI.
Court documents say Bernard contacted Mobolade through texts and a 5-minute phone call.
Like many other elected officials in our community, I only knew him as a local media personality.
Mobolade says those allegations have had far-reaching consequences for him personally.
The rumors have become so ridiculous that they've led to bogus reports in a Nigerian tabloid saying I was arrested by the FBI.
He believes the attacks are coming from those with political motivations and has caused his family to question their safety.
This is not the Colorado Springs I know. We must be better. As I've said before and will say it again, the story of Colorado Springs will be a better story.
So ridiculous. So ridiculous. Does Charles Barkley say it that way, or is that just terrible the way he's so ridiculous? I don't know. Maybe that's a false memory. Anyway, everybody else has to be better. Everybody in Colorado Springs has to be better. Even though the threat was fake, even though the threats he's citing now are fake, he has no specifics about them because they don't exist. He doesn't have to be any better for faking this stuff or for being friends with or associates with the people who did. The rumors of my involvement. It's not a rumor. Your involvement is substantiated by your direct communication with the people who did this hoax hate crime, according to phone records, according to your own communication, which are part of court documents in the case against the people who did this. And I'll be interested to watch, will the people involved in that case out the mayor, the people who are charged? Will they flip on him? Now, usually if you flip, it's pursuant to like bringing charges against that person, or maybe as part of a plea deal, they would, I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is this is a federal case. If the Daily Wire report is correct, the Justice Department and the FBI are looking to protect this mayor for political reasons. So even if the others do flip on this mayor and say, yeah, well, he totally knew and he was in on it and he actually put us up to it, prosecutors probably aren't going to put him on the hook for that, because if the reporting is correct, they have a political motive not to do that. So we'll see how this case develops, but he's got a new denial every week. So I guess we'll just keep checking in on those. And lastly, a story, God, what a great story. It's not hoax hate. It's hate adjacent. But there's a woman who runs a salon in North Idaho, and she decided it would be a good move to pick a fight with Trump supporters. Of course, that's a place where pretty much everyone is a Trump supporter. So bold move. Tiffany Prickett owns and operates what's called Voyage Salon. Voyage Salon. And pretty soon, I guess it's probably going to be Bon Voyage Salon, because it's not going to last much longer. I thought there was a good photo of the salon. Oh, there we go. There's the storefront. Cool sign. After Trump's election win, Tiffany posted a TikTok video calling out toxic masculinity and saying that Trump has enabled men to mistreat women, like all the men who make mean comments on her TikTok posts.
Trump basically gave small men the ability and the courage to be misogynistic and hateful and say shit like your body, my choice, and you won't have a choice, and you will bear my child whether you like it or not. I don't know why men witness aggressions towards women and they just stand idly by and do nothing. Most of the time, men just shrug it off like, oh, that's your problem, or you can take care of yourself, which I fucking can. But I don't understand why more men don't have the courage to stick up to these small men.
Yes, no man was ever a dick before Trump. It never happened before. Trump made all men dicks. What a world it was. All men were so well behaved prior to that. And I know it's not necessary to argue these ridiculous points, but I can't resist, especially as they come up in her subsequent videos. So first of all, no man, no pro-choice or a pro-life person says your body, my choice. No serious person has ever said that. The issue with abortion is that it is someone else's body and someone else's life, and you are ending it. It's not your body, my choice. It's, hey, that child also has a body and you're trying to dispose of it. That would be a violation of that child's rights to life. And it's not a man thing. Many women, including, yes, most women in Idaho, where the practice is banned, they're also pro-life for that reason. It's not your body, my choice. It's someone else's body is involved. You will bear my children, whether you like it or not. No, if you make the decision to create the child, which you participate in, lady, you are responsible for that child. You don't get to murder that child because of your own responsibility. It has nothing. You'll bear my child whether you like it or not. No, that's called rape. If you conceive a child in rape, that is a widely accepted exception. It's incredibly rare. Abortion is not, it's not deployed for correcting rape. Hardly ever does that happen. It is deployed for birth control purposes. It is deployed for elective purposes. It is deployed for the reasons of, whoops, I was irresponsible and I created a life. I'll just end that life. That's the function it serves in today's society. I don't know why more men don't defend women. Well, first of all, you said you don't need it in the same video. You said you can take care of yourself, but also why won't men take care of me? As far as why men won't defend you, first of all, I bet they probably will. I bet if this woman is in trouble in public, pretty much every man in North Idaho probably would help her out if she requested their help. But even if they don't, I don't know, if I was a hypothetical man in this situation and I know you won't defend your own children, maybe I'm not inclined to defend you, since you won't defend the innocent life that you create and consider yourself righteous on account of that fact. And this is speculation on my part, but I just wonder, what's her opinion on the Daniel Penny case? Why won't men defend us women, us poor women? Do you want Daniel Penny in prison for defending women on the subway because he defended women just a little too hard? I don't know what her opinion on Daniel Penny is. I'm just guessing. It'd be interesting to hear her explanation on that, though. Now, these comments, as you could imagine, not well received by her mostly Republican, mostly conservative clientele in North Idaho there. So people started canceling their appointments at her salon. And then she doubled down. And she posted another video calling Trump supporters racist, homophobic, misogynistic, and even also rapists. It's not just Trump. Trump's a rapist, but because you support Trump, you are also a rapist by extension.
So this is me suffering the consequences of my own actions. I just had a client send her husband into my salon and demand a refund for gift cards pre-purchased because of my stance that if you support a racist, homophobic, misogynist rapist, and you're okay with those things because you supported them, that you are in fact those things. And she was so offended by that she said that she did not feel comfortable coming to my salon anymore. I've been doing her for 15 years. I've been to her family functions and family events. She's given me gifts over the years. She was a very good client. And I knew that she was Republican, which I don't have a problem with you being a Republican. I have a problem with you wanting to strip human rights away from people. I will stand up for human rights and suffer those consequences because I will stand up for interracial marriage. I will stand up for same-sex marriage. I will stand up for every right of every trans person in this country. I will stand up for the rights of women and being able to decide their own bodily autonomy for themselves. And if I lose a client because I stand up for human rights and you are offended, which by the way, if you're offended that I said that, you might want to do some inner work. So if you want to not be my client anymore because I stand up for human rights, like I said in my video, if the shoe fucking fits, wear it with your whole foot, Cinderella.
Wow. She's so proud of that line. You can see it in her face. Cock her head. Wow, what attitude. Ironically, what did she describe there? She described a man defending a woman. Oh, one of my clients sent her husband in here to get her money back. Oh, well, I guess men do defend women from you occasionally. You know, you said my wife is a bad person, so I'm here to get my money and defend her. But that's out of line. That guy's a bad guy for doing that. Why don't men defend more women? I'm confused. Are human rights widely violated where she lives in North Idaho? I'm living amongst nothing but human rights abusers. What are the conditions in North Idaho, and why do you live there? If you live among human rights abusers, human rights deniers, what are the human rights abuses that you see in your world around you? Oh, if you're offended, and lady, it's you who's offended. It's about the fact that you think people who disagree with you are rapists, and you call them rapists on social media. And then they, in response to you, are saying, well, you've done a great job with my hair for the last 15 years, but I guess if you think I'm a rapist and you don't want my business anymore, okay, I'll oblige. That's not being offended. If you were saying, hey, here's my opinion, and if you can't tolerate it, then okay, I mean, that's on you. You're saying you don't want their business on account of their views. If that's your position, they're just following your instruction. I don't want your business. Okay, I guess I won't bring my business here anymore. That's not them being offended. That's them being courteous, pursuant to your wishes. You're the one who's offended. But she tripled down. There's another video, and this one's my favorite. She says, well, I'm now getting ready to go work at Chipotle.
They're dropping like flies. I lost one of my clients today who clearly was a Trump supporter. I am so sorry that this last election has upset you so much as to elicit the hateful public post you made on TikTok. Since you have made it clear how you feel about anyone who doesn't share your opinion, I feel you have left no opinion but for me to move on. I wish you the best, and I am terribly sorry. I would rather go work at Chipotle, and I was not lying when I said that I was headed to my Chipotle interview, because I did apply to Chipotle because I'm not going to ask for a handout, and it's been a rough year. I'm a single mom, and my ex-husband does help me out a lot during this time because I refuse to ask for help. But I would rather go and do what I need to do and work at Chipotle after my 22-year career in this industry and refuse to let people feel comfortable in my space to support racism, homophobia, and misogyny and a rapist. I absolutely stand by what I said. And so if you see me working at Chipotle as a business owner and a salon owner of 22 years, say hi.
Which also doesn't make any sense. Okay, you won't cut their hair because they're human rights abusers, but you will make them a burrito? On what basis would you make them a burrito? I'm sorry, I draw the line at at cosmetic services. But do you want black beans or pinto? I will put guac on your human rights abuse burrito if you want. I will do that. She's still going to work in the same hateful community, serving the same hateful people. So what's the difference? The difference, of course, is now she works, or potentially will. The business isn't over as far as I understand, but the way this is heading, now she's going to work with less independence. She's going to have less control. It's not going to be her own business. Her new bosses will assuredly tell her to shut the hell up. She won't be able to say what she thinks, in this way at least, in terms of representing a business anymore. And presumably, she'll probably do it for much lower pay. So yeah, big win. I will also note in that video, she mentions, well, I get a lot of support from my ex-husband. I get substantial support from him. I thought men refused to support women. I thought men refused to defend women. Why are you and your ex-husband divorced? I can only imagine. But why is your ex-husband supporting you despite the divorce? The way she presents it there makes it sound like it's much more than, say, like some sort of court-imposed arrangement, some kind of alimony or something. That she said, my ex-husband helps me out a lot. The way she said it implies that he goes above and beyond. And again, this is a woman who's saying, well, why won't men step in and help us out? I can take care of myself, except for, my ex-husband does step in and help me out and does make sure that I stay afloat despite my idiotic business management. I wonder what that guy's thinking. I wish I could interview him. I would talk to her too. But the husband in this case would love to hear his side of the story. So your ex-wife just sank her business because she hates the people that she lives around and thinks they're a bunch of rapist human rights abusers. Your thoughts? What's it like to prop this up? I wish I could go say hi to her at Chipotle. Unfortunately, my North Idaho connection through the show has been severed. But perhaps someone else, if you're in the North Idaho area and you know the Chipotle in Coeur d'Alene, hey man, make the connection. I would love to see a greeting video or so. Now, I'm not going to advocate any harassment against her, obviously, not just for, formality, but I'm not looking to create some kind of hostility with this woman, but she's saying out there, if you come by the Chipotle, say hi. Why? You said that we're too racist and we're too rapey for you to cut our hair. But we should go to the Chipotle and get a burrito from you. And if we do, we should be nice and say hi. Why couldn't we be nice and say hi at the salon that you owned and operated? What's the difference? Why are you morally superior for refusing to cut the hair of a person who disagrees with you politically, but it's not beneath you to go make a burrito for that same person? Why do you make rape burritos? Why do you feed rapists? Seems awfully morally deficient of you. Anyway, I would love to hear more from this woman if the opportunity presents itself, but I'll leave it there and we'll perhaps circle back with the story if the opportunity ever comes around.
I'll have to just circle back with you.
Where did I leave off in Super Chat? Let me see. I know we talked to Injured Guardian. Ooga Booga Lou, I think, is where I need to go. Matt and I once made art. We did yoga on top of some canvas. He got a sweet burn, and I got to pass off the mess as a Hunter Biden painting. Now, that one is artful. As far as Matt and I once made love references go, that one is tasteful, artful. I like that. Thank you for that. That's a new genre, or a new entry in the genre. Thank you. Oil King, the prosecutor really wants that penny. Christians are going to need help in Syria. That's true. There's a big Christian population there, too. And as far as I understand, protected by Assad, or Assad is friendly to the Christian minority. So I've read or heard. I don't know. But they exist there, so I guess that's a thing. Assad was slandered multiple times. Denmark and the Netherlands give 42 F-16s to Ukraine. Yag, yag, yag. I tooted. Tard yard rug. Is that what I did? I did a tard yard? Or, I don't know. I'll allow it, Oil King, as always. Even though I only understand half of what you're saying. I appreciate your support for the show. Michael Anderson says the U.S. already has a public health care option for veterans. Ask any veteran who also has private insurance which they prefer. I used to work at the Pentagon. I already know the answer. Yeah, I only know a little bit about that. Of course, my brother was in the system and dealt with the VA a lot. And I will say, based on my family's experience, obviously, things went wrong. There was a terrible outcome, all that. But our experience with the VA was not awful. A lot of people jump to the conclusion like, oh, the VA did this or did that, or the VA is terrible. Now, I can't speak to the experience of other people, just my own family's interaction. And at least in terms of our experience, it wasn't awful. But that said, I don't want the government to be making life and death decisions about my family in any context, and I don't trust them to provide a service better than people who actually understand the industry rather, and have accountability to the people who consume that service. Because you like United Health or hate United Health, love Blue Cross, hate Blue Cross. I understand that, like, as a practical matter, we all kind of have to buy into this in order to have access to healthcare, but there's still no gun pointed at your head. Like, even though there's all kinds of government involvement with them. But in the pure sense of private health insurance, you have a choice as a consumer to consume that product or not, and the best products are going to survive, and they're going to have to be accountable to their consumers to do that. The government doesn't have to do that. The government just points a gun and says, this is what you get, take it or leave it. So of course I wouldn't want that for my family. And thank you, Michael. I appreciate your insight and your support for the show, and Godspeed to you. Esoterica Unbound, Lorenz's gormless worldview, Taylor Lorenz, reflects that of a significant fraction of Dems. What they're going to do to stop, they aren't going to stop at the Jews or the capitalists or even the MAGA fans. They long for the rush of the killing fields. Yeah, maybe. I mean, like I said, we've all indulged in this thinking to varying degrees, I'm not accusing the average listener out there. I'm just saying these themes have come up on this show, and I've thought about these things in my head, of course. So it's not like I don't want to be pearl clutchy about it, but if you don't value life for its own sake enough to say we ought to be extremely careful with the process by which we deny life and liberty to people, whether we're confining them in a prison cell or whether we're killing them as a method of justice, the death penalty. The value of life itself, regardless of whether we like the person or not, regardless of what they've done or not, that inherent value means we have a moral obligation to be as precise as we possibly can in making determinations about whether life and liberty will be taken. That is what our justice system is built upon. In theory, I know in practice it hasn't played out that way a lot recently. There's all kinds of corruption involved. The point is, and there will always be errors, again, it's a question of what system is the most accurate. And the system that we just saw in the streets of New York, even if that's satisfying to you personally and you believe that guy did a bunch of stuff to deserve it, I promise you that system is going to have a massive error rate that is going to have massively negative consequences. But why would I try to persuade Taylor Lorenz of anything? I'm just an air raw dogger. So what do I know?
That's disgusting.
Let me give a refresh over here, see what else we got. BD Chimera. Matt advocates for Big Bird costumes for politicians. That's true, because they do evil things and are corrupt enough to escape justice, but simps for CEOs for medical companies who are just as evil. Disappointed. Now, first of all, let me make a clarification. Big Bird costumes are non-lethal. They were not fatal. They are a method of public embarrassment. I will also say, and again, I'll take your point. I'm not dismissing it. Like, are these people gods who are above scrutiny, above criticism? No, they're not. I'm just saying that the allegations made against him are very general, non-specific. There are a lot of questions about how you assign the sort of guilt that was assigned to him. Got to be very careful about that sort of thing. There's also a difference in kind here. The politician is a person who is legally authorized to point the gun at you. The UnitedHealthcare CEO is not. Now, I know you may say, well, as a practical matter, I need UnitedHealthcare to have access to healthcare because I can't afford it, X, Y, and Z. Okay, that guy doesn't have the government gun. He doesn't have the mechanisms of force against you that the government does. As a UnitedHealth consumer, if they have a shitty product and they deny you care or they do these things you don't like, you have the option of going somewhere else and shopping for a different product. That is a key difference between a government official and a private actor in the market. And unfortunately, these days, those people are intertwined. Like, that's one of the biggest problems with the healthcare market is the distinction between those two people is very blurred. because we've got all this government public involvement. So, I mean, I'll take your point. I don't, again, it's not my intent to give you the impression that Brian Thompson is above criticism or UnitedHealthcare is some kind of god or something. It's that the moral principles that apply here are crucial to maintain. And yes, I do believe that the role of a government agent, morally speaking, is different than the role of someone providing a service in the private market. I do think those are different roles, and the situations ought to be considered differently. Brendan Lucas, thanks for supporting the show. Lord Stockingham Puppetin III. That KnuckleHunkyBuck chap is normally far too sharp for his ill-preparedness tonight. He needs to work on his laundry, I guess. Clean his room, like Jordan Peterson said, you know? He was right about all that stuff, I guess. I have to assume that you must have had something terribly clever that he was... He must have had something terribly clever that he was preparing in the background. I think there was something to that laundry bit going on tonight. But yeah, that wasn't a bit. I mean, I'm not throwing him under the bus. I appreciate his participation. We just had a misunderstanding because I thought we were going to do like back and forth. How did Matt get his black eye? Oh, he did and then he did ba 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 ba. That was the intended bit, but I must not have communicated it right because we didn't. Obviously, it didn't materialize. So, here's KnuckleHunkyBuck. Again, I can't say the name right. Damn it. I was going to say, Matt learned why they call me Knuckle. Well, apparently so.
I'm a knucklehead at times.
That is not a bit at all. That's just the truth. We will perfect it as time goes on. Thank you for your contributions, as always. Walsey, so glad the Republicans took the Senate. One senator after another vows to block Trump's appointees. Yeah, I don't know what to make of it because a lot of them aren't on record. You get these reports from NBC saying, 6 senators unnamed oppose. And then you talk to them individually, and it sounds more and more like Hegseth has support. Of course, you know, what happened with Matt Gaetz is a different thing. But I wonder how much of that is genuine Republican support. Those people do exist. Okay, they're, you know, Romney's out of the Senate now, but there are the Romneys, or he's going to be in January. There are the Murkowskis. There are the Collinses. Those people are real, but I wonder if the media effort is inflating the degree of opposition as a matter to apply political pressure to the Trump nominees so that they withdraw themselves, like Matt Gaetz did. Now, maybe Matt Gaetz with its own predetermined strategy thing. I don't know. I still don't understand how that developed and why it went the way that it did. But I think maybe some of this Republican opposition is somewhat overstated for political purposes by Democrats and the media. Because they're not willing to go on record, and then when you actually do talk to the individual ones, they're like, yeah, all right. If they're not a firm yes, they're like, oh, I'll consider it. I'll hear them out. I just wonder if they're dressing it up. Brandon Wilkes says, hi Matt, can confirm that Bronze Stars were handed out like candy to higher ranks who never went near the wire during OEF, Operation Enduring Freedom. That being said, a CIB was not, and Hegseth is the right man for the job. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the premise, there can be some truth to it. You know, that's fine. I'm just saying, like, you know, you respond to the situations that you're in based on everything I've heard about Hegseth's time in the Army. He did what he was supposed to do, and he did it honorably, and he did it in a way that was appreciated. So, you know, he's not a Medal of Honor recipient, obviously, but I think that that suddenly we've Suddenly we've decided that that those Bronze Stars don't count. Is that because of some principle about how they were awarded in that particular theater? Or is that just a convenient way to go after Pete Hegseth? I think we all know the answer to that one. And thank you, Brandon, for your support for the show. Very much appreciated. Also says, he adds here, was my super chat deleted, or did YouTube think my super chat was something weird and conspiratorial? It did go through, assuming you're talking about the prior one, but here's what's weird, Brandon. That first super chat came through in dollars, as one would expect, but this latest one came through in what looks like British pounds or euros. Is that whatever? Is that the symbol? I forget. I always forget which one represents. It's the pound sign, the symbol for the currency of the UK. So somehow your currency switched in this process. Who knows? All right. Thank you, Brennan. Let me let me hop over on Odyssey. I left Odyssey earlier. I want to make sure I don't mean to ignore chats over on Odyssey. Blankets has some great AI images. Thank you for those. Says, did you hear about the news story about Jay-Z and Diddy? I did. I got a text about it or a message about it. Let me see what exactly it said, because I want to make sure I get the allegation correct, because it's quite the allegation. Though if Diddy's involved, I think you can guess what it is. But the New York Post is reporting 4 hours ago, Jay-Z accused of raping a girl 13 with Sean Diddy Combs more than 2 decades ago, according to a bombshell lawsuit.
Oh my God, bro!
I guess that probably isn't surprising, though, actually. I mean, it's an accusation. I don't know what the evidence is, but yeah, nasty accusation for sure. Over on DLive, we're good. Let me catch up on Rumble here. Steve OUK, all medals and decorations are a measure of who wore them. For instance, John Kerry himself wrote himself Purple Hearts based on his own claims. Yeah, I know there were, I forget how exactly all that played out. Yeah, I mean, and again, it's not like, oh, you must worship the ground of every Bronze Star recipient. It's just, it's funny that the way the hit pieces have morphed here. Boob toucher, raging drunk, Bronze Stars that don't really count. That's the trajectory. Link to the future. Salon owner was TDS. I'm a single mom. Yeah, we already knew that. Could have guessed. The sad thing is this woman is hardly an exception. There are hundreds of thousands of lefties just like her. Well, I'm sure her opinions are pretty representative. It's like, I don't know what you're doing in Coeur d'Alene or North Idaho, though. You kind of got to keep that to yourself. I know as a business reality, okay? She has a right to her views just like anybody else. I'm not saying she should be shut up by any mechanism of force. I'm just saying if you have political opinions, especially such strong ones that are like, agree with me or fuck you, you're a rapist. If you're in a significant minority in the place that you live, you're going to have to recognize, okay, either I kind of keep this to myself or I want to have a prosperous business, because the business is not about the politics. The business is about providing great salon services. If it was about politics, it would be a campaign office. And you understand that the reason that people come to you is for those great salon services. It's not about shutting up or censoring yourself. I guarantee you, all the people who went to her salon, who were Trump-supporting women, they all knew her politics one way or another. It didn't bother them because it was probably less in their faces. Sure, she's kooky. Sure, she's a leftist commie, whatever. She does great work on my hair, and that's all I care about. But that wasn't good enough for her. It has to be complete agreement, and not just complete agreement to be a good person in her mind, but be a complete agreement or you're a rapist, which is the most bizarre allegation of them all. But yeah, thank you, Link to the Future. Raymond Donovan is gay. Why do we act as though marital infidelity and abandonment of children is completely irrelevant from job qualifications? Pete Hegseth seems like a garbage man. LARPing crusades isn't redeeming. That's true. He does have questions of character. And as far as I understand, he is on his third marriage. The child abandonment is not something I'm familiar with. So I guess I'll have to look into it. I assume, if I'm going to guess contextually, there are children in these marriages that maybe he only supports financially, or he's not a big part of their lives in terms of like active fatherhood role. Is that a character indicator? Yeah. I think that's something that you consider. Does that mean he's the wrong man for the Defense Department job? I'd have to look at how severe the circumstances are. But for the most part, I'll be fairly forgiving with personal stuff to the extent the person acknowledges maybe, hey, that was a mistake, or I did this wrong, or I'd do that differently if I could again. And certainly in the context of Washington, D.C. corruption, I know that's a low bar against which to compare, and that doesn't mean that Pete Hegseth is entitled to the job, but it would be quite the spectacle for members of Congress to be evaluating the acceptability of, say, his marriage history or the treatment or involvement with his children. That is a hive of scum and villainy, and I guarantee you everything that Pete Hegseth has done, members of Congress have done 50 times over and worse. Now, to your point, Raymond, or assuming you are Raymond and you're not just calling him gay, maybe the correct answer is none of them. None of these members of Congress, not Pete Hegseth either. Hey, that's a morally defensible position too. I can't say you're wrong in that. But I appreciate your support for the show very much. Looks like we're good on Odyssey, good on DLive. Let me give a quick circle back on YouTube and Tippy, and we will call it an evening. looks like we're all set. So I really appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. Appreciate your support for the show. Appreciate you believing me about my impossible yoga pose turned what looks like a black eye but is actually a facial rug burn. Thank you for your contribution to the live production. Thank you to my friend NeoUnrealist for joining me and informing me about everything going on with the international censorship. Thank you to KnuckleHunkyBuck for stopping by with Super Chat. And of course, thank you to my assistant and producer Tim for all of his help. If you are listening later on demand, thank you as well. If you'd like more to listen to, you can head on over to the podcast page of my website, mattchristiansenmedia.com/podcast. Got the entire feed, not just in video format, but audio too, if you just want something to listen to. Anything else show-related, mattchristiansenmedia.com is the place you find it. I will be back Wednesday and Sunday after that. Have a great night and a great week.